If you don't subscribe to the channel, all the stories will happen to you. Get ready for the nightmare. It all began on a gray afternoon when Emma stumbled upon the dusty old box in her grandmother's attic. She had been sent to retrieve some family heirlooms for an upcoming reunion, but what she found instead was something that sent shivers down her spine. The box was weathered and marked with her grandmother's name, but it was locked tight, as if it held the very secrets of the family within its confines. Emma's curiosity piqued, and she immediately felt an inexplicable urge to uncover what lay inside. It was a feeling she couldn't shake, an instinct that told her that this box contained not just memories, but the terrifying truth about her family's past. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching, and set to work searching for a way to open it. As she rummaged through the attic, memories flooded back to her, stories her grandmother used to tell about their family history. They were always vague, shrouded in mystery and a hint of darkness. Strange tales of relatives who had vanished without a trace, whispers of an ancestral home that had burned down under suspicious circumstances, and secrets that lingered in the shadows of their lineage. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Emma found a small, rusted key hidden beneath a pile of old blankets. It was delicate, with intricate engravings that seemed to dance in the faint light of the attic. Holding her breath, she approached the box and inserted the key into the lock. It clicked open, the sound echoing like a distant thunderclap in the silence of the room. With trembling hands, she lifted the lid, revealing a collection of photographs, letters, and a small journal. Emma felt a rush of emotions: fear, excitement, and a nagging sense of dread as she carefully sifted through the contents. The photographs were old, sepia-toned images of her ancestors, their faces etched with an unsettling mix of joy and sorrow. One photograph caught her eye: a group of stern-looking individuals posed outside a grand, crumbling estate. The mansion loomed behind them, its windows dark and foreboding, as if it were hiding secrets of its own. Emma felt a chill creep up her spine. There was something hauntingly familiar about the place. She quickly flipped through the letters, and as she read, her heart raced. They detailed a series of tragic events, disappearances, family feuds, and a curse that seemed to haunt her lineage. The letters spoke of her great-grandmother, Margaret, a woman whose spirit was said to linger in the shadows, unable to find peace due to the unresolved traumas of the past. Emma's hands shook as she opened the journal, its pages yellowed and fragile. The handwriting was frantic, filled with anguished thoughts and ramblings about the family's dark legacy. Margaret wrote about the mansion, her home, which had become a prison of sorts. She claimed that the walls had ears, that the shadows whispered her name, and that the family was doomed to repeat the mistakes of their ancestors. "Why can't they let me go?" one entry read. "The truth must be known, but who will listen? They are always watching, always waiting. I fear I am losing my mind." Emma felt her breath quicken as she realized the depths of her family's suffering. She had always sensed an undercurrent of darkness within her lineage, but this was something entirely different. This was a truth that could unravel everything she thought she knew about her family and herself. Determined to get to the bottom of it, Emma knew she had to uncover the truth about Margaret and the mansion. She decided to visit the estate, which had long been abandoned, shrouded in rumors and local lore. The journey to the old mansion was filled with a sense of dread, and with each mile, Emma's heart raced faster. When she finally arrived, the sight of the decaying structure sent a wave of nausea through her. The mansion stood ominously at the end of a long, winding path, its once grand facade now marred by neglect. Vines crawled up the walls, and the windows were shattered, as if the house had been left to suffer in silence. As she stepped inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. The floorboards creaked beneath her feet, and a shiver ran down her spine. Every instinct screamed for her to turn back, but she pressed on, fueled by the desire to unveil the truth hidden within these walls. Room after room, she searched for any remnants of her family's past. Each space was filled with shadows and memories, but no signs of the answers she sought. As she wandered through the dimly lit halls, she felt an unsettling presence, as if someone were watching her from the corners of her vision. Suddenly, she heard a faint whisper, barely audible, but distinct enough to make her heart stop. "Emma." The voice was soft, almost melodic, yet it sent chills racing down her spine. She turned sharply, scanning the room for the source, but found nothing. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. Silence enveloped her, thick and suffocating. Emma shook her head, trying to dismiss her growing fear. She was alone, she told herself. But deep down, she knew she was far from it. Determined to continue, she found herself drawn to a hidden staircase that spiraled down into the darkness. It was a place she had never known existed, a part of the mansion that seemed to whisper secrets of its own. With each step down, the air grew colder, the darkness more oppressive. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and morphing into shapes that felt all too familiar. Just as she reached the bottom, a door loomed before her, its surface worn and weathered. Emma pushed the door open, and the sight that greeted her sent her reeling. The room was filled with remnants of her family's history. Old furniture, tattered curtains, and the remnants of lives once lived. But in the center of the room stood a mirror, its surface clouded and cracked. As she approached, the voice returned, echoing through her mind. "Emma, it's time to learn the truth." The mirror seemed to shimmer, reflecting not just her image but also flashes of the past, visions of her ancestors, their faces contorted in anguish, begging for release. Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. Their pain was palpable, echoing through generations. "Who are you?" she whispered, feeling both drawn to and repelled by the mirror's energy. In an instant, the air shifted. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a storm. "You are one of us," they said in unison, "and it is time for you to face the truth about our family." With that, the room began to distort, the shadows closing in as the mirror's surface rippled. Emma braced herself, heart pounding as she prepared to uncover the terrifying truth that had haunted her family for generations. As the shadows began to close in around her, Emma felt a strange pull toward the mirror. It shimmered with an ethereal light, and the whispers grew louder, resonating in her ears like a haunting melody. "You belong here," they called, and with each word, Emma felt a flicker of recognition deep within her soul. Compelled by an unseen force, she reached out and placed her hand on the mirror's surface. The coldness of the glass sent shivers up her spine, and for a fleeting moment, she felt as though she was not just touching the mirror, but also the very fabric of her family's history. The air crackled with energy, and then, in an instant, the world around her shifted. Emma was no longer standing in the dimly lit basement of the mansion. Instead, she found herself in a vibrant garden bathed in sunlight. Lush greenery surrounded her, and flowers bloomed in a riot of colors. It felt surreal, as if she had stepped back in time to a moment before her family's darkness took root. In the distance, she saw a group of people gathered around a long wooden table. They laughed and chatted, their voices warm and inviting. As she approached, Emma recognized some of the faces from the photographs she had seen earlier. They were her ancestors, alive and vibrant, their joy radiating through the air. "Margaret," she called, spotting her great-grandmother at the head of the table, a beautiful woman with kind eyes and an infectious smile. But as she approached, the laughter began to fade, and the joyful atmosphere grew heavy with an unseen tension. "Emma," a voice broke through the laughter, deep and resonant. It belonged to a man standing at the edge of the gathering, tall, with a weathered face that held a sense of sorrow. "You shouldn't be here." "Who are you?" Emma asked, confusion washing over her. The man stepped closer, his expression grave. "I am Thomas, your great-great-grandfather. I tried to warn them, but they wouldn't listen." Emma's heart raced as she took in his words. "Warn them about what?" "The darkness that resides in our family," Thomas replied, his voice laced with urgency. "It began with a decision, a pact made long ago that bound our lineage to an unending cycle of despair. You must understand that the past shapes our present, and the choices made by those before you will affect your future." Emma felt a wave of dread wash over her. "What kind of pact?" "An unholy alliance with a force that feeds on our secrets, our fears," he explained, glancing over his shoulder, as if expecting something sinister to emerge from the shadows. It grants power, but at a terrible price. It stole our freedom and condemned us to repeat the same mistakes. It is why our family is marked by tragedy. Suddenly, the joyful scene around her began to fade, replaced by flashes of darkness, images of despair, fear, and anguish. Emma saw her ancestors in various states of suffering. Her great-grandmother, isolated and haunted, her great-uncle, lost to madness, and the flickering memories of others who had been swallowed by the family's dark legacy. "Stop!" Emma cried out, feeling overwhelmed. "I don't want to see this." But the images continued to swirl around her, relentless in their portrayal of the family's pain. Emma's heart raced as she realized that this was not just a story. It was a curse, one that threatened to consume her as well. "Emma, you must confront the truth," Thomas urged, his voice firm yet compassionate. "You have the power to break this cycle, but you must be willing to face the darkness within yourself." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she tried to process his words. "But how can I change anything? I'm just one person." "You are the key," he insisted, stepping closer. "The truth lies not only in the past, but also in your heart. It is time for you to uncover what has been buried for too long." With that, the scene shifted again, the garden dissolving into shadows as Emma found herself back in the dimly lit basement. The air felt heavy with anticipation, and the mirror glimmered ominously before her. Emma took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. She knew she had to confront the darkness that had plagued her family for generations. But how? What did she have to do? Determined to uncover the truth, Emma turned her attention back to the journal she had found earlier. Flipping through the pages, she sought any clues that could help her understand the pact her great-grandfather had mentioned. As she read, one particular entry caught her eye. It described a hidden room within the mansion, an old study that had been locked for years, said to contain artifacts and writings connected to the family's dark history. With newfound resolve, Emma set out to find this room, convinced that the answers she sought were hidden within its walls. She moved through the mansion, her heart pounding as she retraced her steps to the grand staircase. The echoes of the past reverberated in her mind, guiding her toward the study. Finally, she stood before a heavy wooden door, its surface marred by time. The doorknob was cold to the touch, and as she turned it, she felt an electric charge course through her veins. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room filled with dust-covered books and forgotten relics. A large desk sat in the center, strewn with papers and ancient artifacts. Emma stepped inside, her heart racing as she took in the surroundings. As she examined the room, her gaze fell upon a large chest in the corner, ornate and imposing. It was locked, but she sensed it contained something significant. She searched the desk, rummaging through drawers until she found a key tucked away in a compartment. With trembling hands, she approached the chest and inserted the key into the lock. It clicked open, and the lid creaked as she lifted it, revealing a collection of journals, artifacts, and an ancient tome bound in cracked leather. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she carefully opened the tome. The pages were filled with strange symbols and writings, descriptions of rituals and sacrifices, and the names of her ancestors, those who had forged the pact that bound their family to the darkness. As she read, she felt a wave of horror wash over her. The rituals detailed in the tome were sinister, aimed at harnessing dark powers at the cost of their humanity. Each entry was a reminder of the weight her family bore, a legacy that had tainted generations. Suddenly, she heard a noise behind her, a soft rustle, like the whisper of a breeze. She turned, heart racing, and saw a shadow dart across the room. "Who's there?" she called, her voice trembling. But the room was silent, the shadows pressing in around her. Emma felt the weight of her family's past closing in, and in that moment, she knew she was not alone. The darkness that had plagued her ancestors was here, lurking just beyond her sight. Determined to confront it, Emma turned back to the tome, ready to uncover the final truths that would lead her to break the curse once and for all. With her heart pounding, Emma's fingers traced the ancient tome's weathered pages. The air thickened with an energy that felt almost alive, wrapping around her like a shroud. Every word she read resonated with the echoes of her family's past, weaving a tapestry of despair and darkness that had consumed them for generations. The shadows danced in the corners of the dimly lit room, and Emma felt a compulsion to delve deeper. The journal entries documented rituals meant to appease an entity that had granted her ancestors power, but at an unimaginable cost. Her great-grandfather's warnings echoed in her mind. You must confront the truth. As she flipped through the pages, one entry stood out, a ritual meant to sever the family's ties to the darkness. It detailed an ancient ceremony involving a relic that had been passed down through generations, an artifact imbued with the power to break the curse. According to the text, this relic was hidden within the mansion, guarded by the shadows that lingered within its walls. Emma's pulse quickened. She had to find this relic, but where could it be? She recalled the stories her grandmother had shared about the mansion, a hidden compartment beneath the floorboards of the parlor. Could it be there? With determination burning in her chest, Emma gathered the tome and the journals and made her way back to the grand staircase. The mansion felt different now. The air was charged with anticipation, and she sensed that the shadows were watching her every move. Reaching the parlor, she paused at the threshold. The room was bathed in an eerie glow from the setting sun filtering through the dusty windows. Shadows elongated across the floor, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Emma steeled herself and stepped inside, moving toward the fireplace, where her grandmother had always told stories of their ancestors. Kneeling on the cool wooden floor, she began to inspect the area around the fireplace. Her fingers brushed against the floorboards, feeling for any signs of a hidden compartment. After a few moments, she found a loose board near the edge, and with a little effort, she pried it up, revealing a small, dark space beneath. Inside, she discovered a dusty wooden box, ornate yet worn, covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change in the dim light. Emma felt a chill run down her spine, but she was resolute. This box held the key to her family's freedom. As she opened it, the scent of aged wood and something faintly metallic wafted out. Inside lay an object wrapped in tattered fabric, a small dagger with a shimmering blade that glinted in the low light. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she picked it up, feeling its weight in her palm. This was the relic described in the tome. The dagger felt warm to her touch, almost alive, and she could sense the power pulsing within it. But with that realization came a wave of fear. What had this dagger been used for? Flipping through the ancient tome again, she searched for any mention of the dagger. It was said to have been forged from the essence of light, meant to combat the shadows that had plagued her family. But there were warnings too. Using it required a pure heart and unwavering resolve, or it could lead to devastation. With the dagger in hand, Emma felt a surge of hope mingled with apprehension. She had the power to confront the darkness that had haunted her family for far too long. Yet, deep down, a nagging fear whispered that the shadows would not relinquish their hold easily. Deciding to perform the ritual detailed in the tome, Emma returned to the study. She arranged the journals and the dagger on the desk, creating a makeshift altar. The weight of her ancestors' gaze seemed to settle over her, and she could almost hear their whispered prayers for salvation. As she prepared for the ritual, she lit a few candles she found scattered around the room, their flickering flames casting dancing shadows against the walls. The atmosphere felt charged with energy, and she closed her eyes, focusing on the task ahead. With her heart racing, she began to recite the incantation from the tome, her voice steady despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm her. The words rolled off her tongue, each syllable resonating in the stillness of the room. Suddenly, the air shifted, growing colder as the shadows deepened. Emma felt a chill creep down her spine, and the whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a tempest. "You cannot escape," they hissed, echoing her family's tragic past. But Emma pressed on, holding the dagger tightly, channeling all her determination and strength into her words. With each phrase, she felt the power of her ancestors surge through her, a connection to the generations that had come before her. As the final words left her lips, the shadows around her writhed and recoiled, as if the very fabric of darkness was being torn apart. A blinding light erupted from the dagger, illuminating the room and dispelling the shadows that had long lingered in the corners. Emma stood firm, her heart pounding in her chest, as the energy enveloped her. She felt the weight of her family's sorrow begin to lift, and for the first time, she sensed a glimmer of hope breaking through the darkness. But then, in an instant, the light flickered, and she was plunged into darkness once more. The whispers morphed into anguished cries, and Emma's heart sank. She had awakened something. The darkness was fighting back, and it would not relinquish its hold without a fight. Panicking, Emma tightened her grip on the dagger, focusing on the light that still flickered within her. She called upon the strength of her ancestors, channeling their love and resilience. The cries around her grew louder, filled with pain and despair, but she stood resolute, refusing to succumb to the darkness. "Your time is over," Emma shouted, her voice ringing out with defiance. "I will not let you take another generation." The dagger pulsed in her hand, responding to her determination. A surge of light burst forth, flooding the room and banishing the shadows that had tormented her family for far too long. In that moment, the anguished cries transformed into a chorus of relief, echoing through the room as the darkness began to dissolve. The shadows retreated, and Emma felt a warm presence enveloping her. Her ancestors, finally free from the chains that had bound them for generations. As the light faded and the room returned to its previous state, Emma fell to her knees, breathless but filled with a sense of peace. She had confronted the darkness, faced the truth of her family's past, and emerged victorious. But as she looked around the now quiet study, she knew that this was only the beginning. There were still secrets to uncover, still shadows lingering in the corners of her family's history. Emma understood that her journey was far from over. She would continue to seek the truth, not just for herself, but for all those who had come before her. With newfound determination, she rose to her feet, clutching the dagger tightly. Emma was ready to face whatever lay ahead, to unravel the remaining mysteries of her family's past, and to ensure that their legacy would finally be one of light rather than darkness. The air was still as Emma stood in the center of the study, her heart racing with the realization that she had only scratched the surface of her family's dark legacy. The energy of the ritual still buzzed around her, but now it felt more like a prelude than a conclusion. She could feel the echoes of the past reverberating through the walls, calling her to dig deeper into the shadows that still lurked within the mansion. Determined to unveil the last secrets, Emma took a moment to gather her thoughts. The dagger, still warm in her hand, served as a reminder of the battle she had just fought. She knew she needed to confront not just the remnants of darkness that clung to her family, but the very source of it, a sinister force that had entangled them for generations. As she turned to leave the study, the atmosphere shifted once again. The walls seemed to close in, and she could hear the faint whisper of her name, a chilling invitation laced with both dread and intrigue. "Emma," it beckoned, drawing her further into the depths of the mansion. With resolve, Emma ventured toward the source of the voice. Each step felt heavier than the last as she navigated the dimly lit hallways. The mansion had transformed from a mere family home into a labyrinth of secrets, its architecture twisting and turning in ways she had never noticed before. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, almost teasing her, daring her to follow. The voice guided her to the basement, a place she had only ever seen in her grandmother's stories, a realm where family horrors had unfolded, concealed behind layers of neglect and cobwebs. Emma hesitated for a moment, but the memory of her ancestors' anguish steeled her resolve. She had to face whatever lay below, to unearth the truth that had haunted her family for far too long. As she descended the creaking staircase, the air grew colder, and the oppressive darkness enveloped her. The basement was a dismal place, filled with remnants of a past long forgotten. Dusty furniture covered with sheets, old photographs fading in the gloom, and a faint smell of mildew permeating the air. In the center of the basement stood an imposing wooden door, its surface scarred and worn, as if it had been battered by time itself. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a tempest. "Open it, Emma," they urged. "Discover what has been hidden." With a deep breath, Emma approached the door. Her heart pounded in her chest as she grasped the cold handle, a mixture of fear and determination coursing through her veins. She turned the handle, and the door creaked open, revealing a dark room beyond. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with an unsettling energy. A single flickering light bulb swung from the ceiling, casting erratic shadows that danced on the walls. In the center of the room lay a large, circular table, surrounded by worn chairs, each one seeming to hold the weight of countless secrets. Emma stepped into the room, her senses heightened. The air was charged with anticipation, and she could feel the presence of something, or someone, watching her. The whispers now felt more insistent, urging her to take her place at the table. As she approached, Emma noticed something peculiar about the table. It was etched with strange symbols and markings, reminiscent of the ancient tome she had studied. In the center of the table sat a dark, ornate box, similar to the one she had found in the parlor. Its surface shimmered, and a sense of foreboding hung in the air. Curiosity overcame her fear as she reached out to open the box. Inside, she found a collection of items: a small mirror, a faded photograph of a man she didn't recognize, and a tattered letter written in a shaky hand. Each item felt heavy with significance, pulling her deeper into the mysteries of her family's past. Emma picked up the photograph, her heart racing as she recognized the haunting familiarity in the man's features. It was her great-grandfather, but the man in the photo looked different. His eyes were wild, and an unsettling grin stretched across his face. Turning her attention to the letter, Emma carefully unfolded it, her breath catching as she began to read. The words spilled forth, a confession from a man tormented by the darkness that had consumed his life. He spoke of a pact made in desperation, a bargain struck to secure power for the family, but at a grave cost, a price that had ensnared generations. Tears filled Emma's eyes as she realized the depth of the burden her family had carried. They had not just been victims of their own choices, but had also become prisoners of a legacy filled with pain and sorrow. Yet in that moment of despair, a flicker of hope ignited within her. She had the dagger. She could break the cycle. But as she contemplated her next move, the shadows in the room began to stir. A dark figure materialized from the corner, its form shrouded in a swirling mass of darkness. The whispers transformed into anguished wails, drowning out her thoughts. "Emma," the figure rasped, its voice a chilling echo of her own. "You think you can escape the legacy? You are one of us now." Emma's heart raced as she faced the manifestation of her family's dark past. The creature bore the features of her ancestors, twisted and distorted by the pain and suffering they had endured. It reached out a shadowy hand, beckoning her closer, promising power and understanding if only she would abandon her quest. "No!" Emma shouted, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "I won't become part of this darkness. I will not let your pain control me any longer." As the creature advanced, Emma grasped the dagger tightly, its blade shimmering with an otherworldly light. She raised it high, feeling the energy surge through her. The shadows recoiled, the whispers fading into agonized cries. "I am breaking this curse," she declared, her voice ringing with determination. With a fierce resolve, Emma plunged the dagger into the center of the table, the point striking true. The room erupted in a blinding light, the shadows swirling violently as the darkness shrieked in fury. "No!" the figure howled, its form flickering as the light engulfed it. The walls trembled, and Emma felt the power of her ancestors surge around her, a protective force urging her to keep fighting. The dagger pulsed with energy, illuminating the room as the shadows writhed in agony. Emma closed her eyes, envisioning her family, each member lost to the darkness, finding peace at last. The light intensified, filling every corner of the basement until the shadows were reduced to nothing more than echoes. As the last remnants of darkness dissipated, Emma fell to her knees, gasping for breath. The air felt lighter, free from the weight of despair that had haunted her family for so long. She opened her eyes to find the room transformed. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of peace. The box, the table, the shadows, all had vanished, leaving behind only the memory of the confrontation. In that moment, Emma realized that she had broken the cycle. She had confronted the darkness, faced the truth of her family's past, and emerged victorious. The weight of generations had been lifted from her shoulders, and she felt a profound sense of relief wash over her. As she stood in the now empty room, Emma knew her journey was far from over. She had the power to shape her family's future, to forge a new legacy free from the shackles of darkness. The whispers that had once tormented her had transformed into a melody of hope, guiding her toward a brighter path. With newfound determination, Emma ascended the staircase, leaving the basement behind. She was ready to embrace her family's history, to share their story, and to ensure that the shadows would never return. The light of dawn streamed through the windows as Emma emerged from the mansion, a renewed sense of purpose coursing through her veins. The world outside felt vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the darkness she had just conquered. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of earth and new beginnings, a promise of hope that washed over her like a warm embrace. As she stepped onto the property, she felt the weight of her family's history shift. The mansion, once a prison of secrets and sorrow, now stood as a testament to her triumph. It was a reminder that the past, while powerful, did not have to dictate the future. Emma's phone buzzed in her pocket, breaking her reverie. She pulled it out to see a message from her best friend, Sarah. "Are you okay? I was worried about you." The concern in Sarah's text reminded Emma of the people who cared for her, the connections that had always anchored her amidst the chaos of her family's legacy. She quickly typed a reply, assuring Sarah that she was all right and that she had made significant progress in unraveling the dark tapestry of her family's past. It felt good to share her journey, to connect with someone who had always believed in her. After sending the message, Emma took a deep breath, ready to confront the next steps of her life. But first, she needed to acknowledge the weight of her family's history. Emma knew the truth had to be shared, not just for her sake, but for the sake of her ancestors who had suffered in silence for too long. She had to honor their struggles while also paving the way for a future unburdened by the shadows of the past. Determined, she made her way to the local library, a place that had always been a sanctuary for her. The warm, inviting atmosphere felt comforting, and as she stepped inside, she could almost hear the whispers of knowledge calling her. She headed straight for the genealogy section, eager to delve deeper into her family's history and the tales that lay hidden in the dusty tomes. Emma spent hours poring over records, piecing together the fragments of her family's story. She discovered stories of resilience and strength, of ancestors who had fought against the odds, battling their demons and overcoming tremendous adversity. With each revelation, she felt a deeper connection to her lineage, a sense of pride that began to overshadow the darkness she had faced. As the sun began to set, Emma left the library with a stack of notes and books clutched tightly in her arms. She felt lighter, as if she had shed a layer of heaviness. The knowledge she had uncovered filled her with a sense of empowerment, a commitment to honor her family by breaking the cycle of pain. Back at the mansion, Emma felt a surge of inspiration. She envisioned transforming the once foreboding space into a community center dedicated to mental health and healing, a place where people could come together to share their stories and support one another. She wanted to create a safe haven where the whispers of the past could be turned into a chorus of hope and recovery. The idea ignited a fire within her. Emma spent the following weeks meticulously planning the center, reaching out to local organizations, and gathering resources to bring her vision to life. She organized community meetings, inviting people from all walks of life to come together and share their experiences. Slowly but surely, she saw the community respond, rallying around her cause. The opening day of the community center arrived, a culmination of Emma's hard work and dedication. The mansion, once a symbol of sorrow, was now a vibrant hub of healing and connection. As she stood at the entrance, watching people flow into the space, a sense of fulfillment washed over her. Emma stepped up to the microphone, her heart racing with excitement. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady. "This center is more than just a building. It is a sanctuary for our stories, a place where we can share our burdens and support one another. Today, we turn the page on our past and embrace a future filled with hope." The crowd erupted in applause, and Emma felt a swell of gratitude for the community that had come together. She shared her family's story, recounting the darkness that had once consumed them, but highlighting the power of resilience and healing. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the center, Emma realized that she had not only transformed her family's legacy, but had also created a space for others to heal. She had turned the whispers of the past into a powerful narrative of hope, inspiring those around her to confront their own shadows. In the following months, the community center flourished. Emma organized workshops, support groups, and storytelling sessions, encouraging everyone to share their experiences. The stories flowed freely, each one a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Laughter and tears mingled in the air, creating an atmosphere of connection and understanding. Emma often found herself reflecting on her journey, the fear she had felt, the darkness she had confronted, and the light that had emerged from it all. She had not only unearthed her family's past, but had also discovered her own strength in the process. The voice that had once whispered secrets in her head now echoed a different message, one of courage, resilience, and hope. As she looked around the bustling center, Emma felt a profound sense of peace. She knew that the journey was ongoing and that healing was a continuous process, but she also recognized that she had the power to shape her own narrative. The shadows that had once threatened to consume her family had been transformed into a source of strength, fueling her commitment to making a difference. With each passing day, Emma embraced her role as a storyteller, sharing the lessons learned from her family's past while also listening to the stories of others. Together, they wove a tapestry of healing, binding their experiences into a collective narrative of hope. And as the community center thrived, Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had turned the page on her family's history. The once terrifying truth about her family had transformed into a powerful catalyst for change, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the end, Emma had learned that the past could shape who she was, but it did not have to define her. The mansion, with all its dark secrets, had become a beacon of hope, a reminder that even the heaviest burdens could be transformed into something beautiful. She had embraced the light within herself and had inspired others to do the same. With that thought, Emma stepped outside the center, breathing in the crisp evening air. The stars twinkled above, a reminder of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. She was ready to face whatever came next, armed with the knowledge that her family's past was not just a story of darkness, but a journey toward healing and hope. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. The day began like any other for Mia, a freelance graphic designer living in a cozy, slightly worn apartment in the heart of the city. The morning sun filtered through her half-drawn curtains, casting warm, golden rays across her cluttered desk filled with sketches, art supplies, and the remnants of last night's takeout. As she sipped her steaming cup of coffee, she scrolled through her emails, contemplating the projects lined up for the week ahead. Mia had always loved her apartment. It was a vintage building, rich with character and history, boasting intricate moldings and high ceilings that whispered stories of days long gone. Yet, as the months passed, she found herself yearning for something more, a spark of adventure in her otherwise routine life. Little did she know that today would be the day that spark ignited. After finishing her coffee, Mia decided to tackle the disarray in her living room. She picked up her trusty old vacuum cleaner and set to work, weaving between the furniture and shoving aside piles of art supplies. As she vacuumed the corner behind the large bookshelf, she noticed something odd. The wood paneling felt different beneath her fingertips. Curious, she paused the vacuum and began to inspect the area more closely. The panel felt slightly loose, a peculiar sight in an otherwise solid wall. With a gentle tug, she pulled it, and to her surprise, it gave way, revealing a small opening just big enough for her to fit a hand through. Heart racing, Mia's imagination sparked to life. What could possibly lie behind this wall? Was it a hidden storage space, or perhaps a relic of the building's past? Intrigued, Mia decided to clear some space around the bookshelf, her heart pounding with the thrill of discovery. She shoved the heavy piece of furniture aside and knelt down, eyes wide with anticipation. The opening seemed to beckon her, and with another careful tug, she managed to pull the panel completely away from the wall. Peering into the darkness beyond, She felt a mix of trepidation and excitement. The dim light from her apartment barely penetrated the hidden space, but she could make out the faint outline of what appeared to be a narrow hallway. A layer of dust coated the floor, untouched by time, and a musty scent wafted out, suggesting the space had been sealed off for years. Without hesitation, Mia grabbed her phone, using its flashlight feature to illuminate the path ahead. She stepped cautiously into the hidden room, her senses heightened. The walls were lined with old bricks, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling, creating an eerie yet fascinating ambience. As she moved further inside, her heart raced at the thought of what secrets might lie hidden within these walls. The hallway was narrow, barely wide enough for her to pass through. She could hear her breath echoing softly in the confined space, amplifying her curiosity. After a few steps, she stumbled upon a wooden door at the end of the hallway, its surface scarred and weathered, a stark contrast to the pristine wood of her apartment. Mia's hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob, anticipation buzzing in the air. What was behind this door? Her mind raced with possibilities. Could it be an old storage room, a forgotten cellar, or perhaps something much more mysterious? With a deep breath, she twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The creaking of the hinges felt ominous, as if the door hadn't been opened in decades. A wave of cool air rushed out, bringing with it the scent of mildew and dust. Mia stepped inside, her phone's flashlight illuminating the dim interior. What she found took her breath away. The room was filled with relics from another era, dust-covered furniture, stacks of old newspapers, and boxes overflowing with forgotten trinkets. Each item seemed to whisper stories of the past, and Mia felt a surge of excitement. She stepped further into the room, absorbing every detail. A vintage armchair, its fabric faded and torn, stood in the corner, while a large trunk lay open, revealing an assortment of curious objects, letters tied with fraying ribbons, old photographs, and what appeared to be a journal. As she approached the trunk, a chill ran down her spine. The photographs depicted people she didn't recognize, their faces frozen in time, yet their expressions were filled with emotion. The journal caught her eye, its leather cover cracked and worn. Mia picked it up, her fingers tracing the embossed letters on the front. It felt heavy with history, as if it held secrets begging to be uncovered. Sitting cross-legged on the dusty floor, she opened the journal, the pages yellowed and brittle. The handwriting was elegant, yet shaky, a testament to the passage of time. As she read, a sense of unease washed over her. The entries spoke of love, loss, and strange occurrences in the apartment. A sense of unease that had haunted the writer, a feeling Mia had unknowingly inherited. With each entry, Mia became more engrossed in the author's experiences. The writer described hearing whispers in the night, feeling a presence watching her, and discovering hidden passages within the walls of the building. It was as if the journal was a reflection of Mia's own life, intertwining her fate with that of the mysterious author. As she read on, Mia realized that the last entry held a warning, a plea to anyone who might find the journal. If you are reading this, it began, know that the walls of this apartment are alive with memories, some dark and some beautiful. Beware of what lies within, for the past is never truly buried. Mia's heart raced. Was it merely the wild imagination of a long-gone tenant, or was there some truth to the words? A chill swept through the hidden room, and she felt an inexplicable pull to uncover more about the apartment's past. She gathered her thoughts and made a mental note to research the building's history. But for now, the thrill of discovery was too intoxicating to ignore. The hidden room was not just a relic. It was a gateway to the secrets of those who had come before her, and she felt compelled to honor their stories. The sun had begun to set, casting eerie shadows across the room as Mia reluctantly decided it was time to return to her own space. She carefully placed the journal back in the trunk, promising herself to return and explore the hidden treasures further. The hidden room was now a part of her life, intertwining her fate with the whispers of the past. As she exited the hidden room, pulling the wooden panel back into place, Mia felt a sense of purpose ignite within her. She was no longer just a tenant in her apartment. She had become a keeper of its stories, a custodian of its history. The discovery had awakened something in her, a deep-seated need to unravel the mysteries that surrounded her. Returning to her living space, she glanced at the clock. Time had slipped away unnoticed. The darkness outside deepened, wrapping her apartment in a blanket of quiet. Yet instead of feeling uneasy, Mia felt a surge of anticipation. This was only the beginning. She was determined to uncover the truth behind her apartment, its hidden room, and the ghosts that lingered within. Would she discover the secrets that lay buried in her walls? And what stories awaited her in the depths of the past? As the evening shadows lengthened, Mia sat at her desk, the dim light of her desk lamp casting a warm glow over the scattered remnants of her day's discoveries. The journal from the hidden room lay open in front of her, the pages inviting her to delve deeper into its secrets. Each entry was a breadcrumb leading her through the labyrinth of history hidden within her apartment's walls. Determined to learn more, Mia flipped to the next page. The author's handwriting seemed to dance across the paper, the words telling tales of love and betrayal, of joy and sorrow. The more she read, the more she felt a connection to the writer, a bond forged through shared experiences of loneliness, curiosity, and an insatiable desire to understand the world. One entry, dated August 15th, 1975, caught her attention. It spoke of a man in the walls, a figure who supposedly moved silently through the apartment, his presence felt but never seen. He is a guardian of the secrets the writer had penned, but there is something dark about him. I hear his footsteps at night, soft yet unsettling, as if he is watching over me. Mia's pulse quickened. She couldn't shake the feeling that the whispers of the past were alive around her, that the boundaries between her life and that of the journal's author were blurring. Could this man in the walls be connected to the strange occurrences she had sensed since moving in? Shadows that seemed to flicker out of the corner of her eye. The sudden chill in the air when she was alone. As the night deepened, Mia decided to venture back into the hidden room. She felt a compelling need to confront the mysteries head-on. Gathering her courage, she retrieved her flashlight and headed back through the narrow opening, her heart pounding in anticipation. The hidden room felt different now, charged with a palpable energy. The darkness seemed to pulse, and she could hear the faintest echo of her footsteps. As she stepped further inside, the room appeared more alive than before. Dust motes danced in the beam of her flashlight, swirling like tiny spirits lost in time. Mia focused her attention on the trunk that held the journal, her mind racing with questions. Why had the previous tenant felt the presence of this man? What was his purpose? She knelt beside the trunk, running her fingers over the edges, feeling the coolness of the wood beneath her touch. She needed to find more artifacts, more pieces of the story. Opening the trunk again, she rummaged through the items, her breath catching as she uncovered more photographs. This time, the faces looked familiar. They were the same people captured in earlier photos, but they seemed to grow older, their smiles fading into grimaces of worry. One photograph in particular stood out, a black and white image of a woman standing in front of her apartment building, looking directly at the camera. Her eyes were piercing, as if they could see right through Mia, connecting them across the decades. "Who are you?" Mia whispered to the photograph, entranced by the woman's gaze. She felt a tug in her memory, a vague recollection of having seen her before. But from where? Mia continued to sift through the contents of the trunk, uncovering a delicate lace handkerchief and a small, intricately carved wooden box. She opened the box to reveal a collection of old keys, each one unique, each one a potential door to another mystery. The weight of history felt tangible, and Mia's mind raced with possibilities. Suddenly, a soft creaking sound echoed from behind her, making her heart skip a beat. She froze, the flashlight beam shaking slightly as she turned toward the sound. The narrow hallway felt colder, and shadows danced along the walls, flickering like whispers. "Mia," a voice whispered, barely audible, yet so close that it sent a shiver down her spine. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling slightly. "Is anyone there?" Silence enveloped her, thick and heavy. The voice had seemed almost familiar, as if it were beckoning her to remember something lost. She felt a compulsion to stay, to dig deeper into the secrets this space held. With renewed determination, she turned back to the trunk, determined not to let fear overshadow her curiosity. As she rummaged, Her fingers brushed against a leather-bound notebook, smaller than the journal, but just as worn. She pulled it out, wiping away layers of dust. Its pages were filled with sketches, and as she flipped through, Mia felt a rush of emotions. The drawings depicted scenes of the apartment, but there was something unsettling about them. The shadows appeared darker, the angles more distorted, as if the artist had captured something sinister lurking just beneath the surface. She studied one particular drawing that depicted the very hallway she was in now. But at the end of the hallway was a figure, shrouded in shadow, watching. Mia's breath caught in her throat. It was as if the artist had seen what she had felt all along. The details were haunting, and the realization settled in her mind. This hidden room was a vessel of untold stories, filled with echoes of lives lived and lost. Deciding she needed to investigate further, Mia made a mental note to examine the layout of the building more closely. Perhaps there were more hidden spaces, more secrets tucked away in the walls. What if the man in the walls was not just a figment of imagination, but a guardian of something much darker? With the sketches now a source of inspiration, Mia returned to the living room, determined to find a way to explore the apartment complex's history. She started researching online, digging into the archives of the local library. She learned about the building's construction, its original owners, and the strange occurrences that had plagued residents over the years. Mia stumbled upon articles mentioning unexplained noises, sightings of shadowy figures, and stories of people moving out in the dead of night, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. It seemed that her apartment was not unique in its haunted reputation. As she gathered more information, a pattern emerged, a thread woven through the lives of those who had lived in the building. A sense of unease seemed to linger, a warning passed from tenant to tenant, each adding to the haunting legacy of the place. The thought that she was now part of this ongoing story thrilled and terrified her. With each piece of information she uncovered, the more she felt connected to the woman in the photograph and the artist of the sketches. They were all part of a shared experience, a collective memory of the apartment and its secrets. Feeling exhausted but exhilarated, Mia finally turned in for the night, her mind racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. As she lay in bed, the journal and sketches beside her, she closed her eyes, hoping to find clarity in her dreams. But as she drifted off, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was not alone. The echoes of the past lingered in her mind, and the man in the walls seemed to grow closer, his presence a constant reminder that the stories of the forgotten were now hers to uncover. The following day dawned with an unsettling stillness that enveloped Mia's apartment. As she prepared her breakfast, the sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust particles floating in the air. Yet, the warmth of the sun did little to soothe the growing unease in her chest. The discoveries of the previous night loomed large in her mind, each revelation feeding a relentless curiosity. After a hasty breakfast, Mia dove back into her research. She had decided to focus on the building's history, hoping to connect the dots that had eluded her. She spent hours poring over online records, but soon realized that the true treasure lay hidden within the local library's archives. Mia donned her coat and set off for the library, determined to uncover more about the hidden histories of her apartment and its previous occupants. The cold air bit at her cheeks as she walked, but her mind was buzzing with anticipation. Each step echoed the feeling that she was walking toward a revelation that would change everything. Upon arriving at the library, she navigated through the maze of shelves, finally finding the historical section. Dust motes swirled in the light as she pulled out boxes of old newspapers, local histories, and architectural plans. Mia's heart raced as she began sifting through the brittle pages, her fingers trembling with excitement. The hours slipped by unnoticed as she lost herself in the stories of the past. She discovered that the building had been constructed in the late 1800s, a time when the neighborhood was bustling with life and opportunity. However, dark tales also lingered within its walls, a history marred by tragedy, including mysterious disappearances and whispers of a hidden room that had been sealed off after a tragic incident involving a previous tenant. As she delved deeper, a particular article caught her eye. It detailed the life of a woman named Eliza Hawthorne, who had lived in the apartment nearly 50 years ago. The article spoke of her vibrant personality and the curious events that surrounded her. Neighbors described hearing strange noises and glimpsing shadows that moved just out of sight. Eliza, however, had never seemed troubled by these occurrences, often claiming that they were merely the whispers of the building. But as the years passed, Eliza's presence faded, and the whispers turned to screams. The article concluded with the haunting details of her sudden disappearance, leaving behind a community shrouded in mystery and sorrow. The last known sighting of her was just before the police found her apartment stripped bare, as if she had vanished into thin air. Mia's breath hitched in her throat. This was the woman from the photograph. The woman who had looked at her with those piercing eyes now felt eerily present, as if she were urging Mia to discover the truth of her fate. But why had Eliza left? And why did her spirit seem to linger in the walls? With newfound determination, Mia took notes and jotted down questions that bubbled to the surface. She needed to learn more about Eliza's life and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. As she gathered her materials, she felt an urgency, as if the answers were beckoning her. Back at home, the apartment felt charged with energy. The hidden room seemed to call to her, a siren song promising revelations. Mia knew that she had to confront whatever darkness lay within those walls. She felt the weight of Eliza's story pressing on her, urging her to unearth the truth that had been buried for decades. As she stepped into the hidden room, a sense of foreboding washed over her. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the faint creaking of the building settling around her. She placed her findings on the trunk and turned her attention to the sketches, feeling as if the artist had captured moments of Eliza's life in more than just lines and shadows. The first sketch was of Eliza, vibrant and full of life, dancing in her living room. The next depicted her gazing out the window, her expression wistful. But then came the darker images, the shadows looming in the corners of her home, the figure in the hallway watching, and finally, a drawing of the hidden room itself, filled with chaotic scribbles that seemed to echo Eliza's final moments. Mia's heart raced as she examined each sketch. The last one depicted the very hallway she had been hearing noises from, but the figure drawn there was unmistakably a man. He loomed large, a shadowy presence with indistinct features, watching over Eliza. The sketches suggested a connection that felt tangible and terrifying, as if they were warning her of the fate that had befallen Eliza. A cold draft swept through the room, sending a shiver down Mia's spine. She pulled her coat tighter around herself, and for a moment, she thought she saw movement in the corner of her eye. "Eliza," she called softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The air felt electric, charged with the presence of something otherworldly. With her heart pounding, Mia reached for the trunk, rummaging through its contents once more. In her quest for understanding, she uncovered a small, intricately designed locket. It was tarnished, but as she opened it, she found a tiny photograph of a man and woman smiling, Eliza and the shadowy figure from the sketches. Who was he? Was he the man in the walls, the one who had been watching over her? The realization sent chills through Mia. She had to know more about this man. He seemed central to Eliza's story, an integral part of the puzzle that had haunted her for decades. Determined, Mia returned to her research, hoping to find any records of Eliza's life and the man who had so mysteriously occupied her space. The locket felt heavy in her palm, a tangible reminder that the past was not as distant as she had once believed. Over the next few days, Mia dove into the depths of local archives, old newspapers, and even social media groups dedicated to the history of her neighborhood. She discovered that Eliza had a family, a brother who had moved away after her disappearance, and a sister who had tragically passed away at a young age. There were no mentions of the man in the photographs, which only deepened the mystery. One afternoon, while searching through a digital archive, Mia stumbled upon an old public records entry. It mentioned a William Hawthorne, Eliza's father, and his unsettling history. The entry detailed a man obsessed with the occult, someone who had reportedly dabbled in dark practices. Her heart raced as she connected the dots. Could the secrets of Eliza's life be tied to her father's pursuits? With the pieces of the puzzle slowly falling into place, Mia felt a surge of determination. She needed to confront the truth, to uncover the legacy that lingered within her apartment. As she returned home that evening, she felt the weight of history pressing down upon her, urging her to continue digging. When she entered the hidden room, She placed the locket carefully on the trunk, feeling an unspoken connection to Eliza. The sketches surrounded her like a haunting gallery, each image a window into the past. The man in the walls seemed to loom larger than life, a silent sentinel watching over the hidden truths. That night, as Mia lay in bed, she felt a sense of impending revelation. She knew that she was close to uncovering the heart of the mystery, the truth that had eluded Eliza all those years ago. The darkness that shrouded her apartment felt alive, and she was prepared to confront whatever awaited her in the shadows. As she drifted off to sleep, the voice she had heard before whispered through her mind. "Find me," it urged, the words echoing in the silence of the night. The line between reality and the unknown began to blur, and Mia understood that the journey she had embarked upon was only beginning. The following day brought a sense of urgency that propelled Mia out of bed. The weight of Eliza's story pressed heavily on her shoulders, and she could no longer delay confronting the secrets lurking in her apartment. She felt a compulsion to face whatever darkness had entwined itself within the walls of her home. The hidden room had whispered to her, and now it was time to listen closely. After a quick breakfast, she prepared herself mentally for the day ahead. The sunlight streamed through the window, but she felt a chill in the air that had nothing to do with the temperature. It was as if the very walls of her apartment held their breath, waiting for her next move. Mia decided it was time to dig deeper into the history of the man who had appeared in Eliza's photographs. She revisited the archives at the local library, determined to find any trace of him. Armed with a locket and sketches, she delved into family records and local histories, desperate to uncover the truth behind the shadow that seemed to loom larger with each passing moment. Hours passed as Mia sifted through newspaper articles and public records. Each article seemed to lead her deeper into a labyrinth of intrigue. And then, as she flipped through the pages of a particularly old newspaper, she found it. A small article tucked away in the corner that detailed a man named Charles Hawthorne. He was described as a reclusive figure, the estranged brother of Eliza. The article hinted at an obsession with his sister's life and the peculiar circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Mia's heart raced as she read the details. Charles had been rumored to have lived in the apartment for a time after Eliza's disappearance, leading her to wonder if he had been the one to hide the room that now lay beneath her floorboards. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. What had he been doing in her home? What secrets did he guard? With newfound determination, Mia rushed home, her mind racing with possibilities. She felt an overwhelming urge to search the hidden room once again. Perhaps it held more than just memories. Perhaps it concealed the truth she had been seeking. As she stepped into the hidden room, the air felt thicker, almost suffocating. She could hear the echoes of her own heartbeat as she stood before the trunk, the locket heavy in her pocket. It was time to confront whatever had been hidden for so long. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as she prepared to delve deeper into the trunk's contents. Opening the trunk, she pulled out the sketches and scattered them around her. Each image felt alive, pulsing with energy, as if they were beckoning her to uncover their secrets. The final sketch, depicting the shadowy figure in the hallway, captivated her attention. It was a direct invitation to explore further, to unearth what lay beneath the surface. Mia noticed the corner of the trunk had a loose board. Curiosity piqued. She pried it open, revealing a small compartment hidden within. Inside lay a collection of old letters, their edges yellowed with age. Each letter was addressed to Eliza, filled with affection and longing from an unknown admirer. But as she flipped through the pages, her heart sank. The tone of the letters shifted, becoming more desperate and dark. One particular letter caught her eye. It was filled with frenzied scrawls, expressing a man's anguish over Eliza's disappearance and his belief that she had betrayed him. The letter was signed Simply C. A chill washed over Mia. Was this Charles? Did he harbor such deep-seated feelings for his sister? With a mixture of dread and curiosity, Mia continued to explore the letters. They revealed a twisted tale of obsession, jealousy, and longing that seemed to intertwine with the very fabric of her apartment. Each letter added a new layer to the mystery, and she could almost feel Eliza's presence growing stronger in the room, urging her to uncover the truth. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and Mia felt a cold breeze brush against her skin. The lights flickered, and she sensed a movement in the shadows. Panic surged through her. "Eliza," she called out, her voice trembling in the oppressive silence. The air crackled with tension as she felt an overwhelming sense of being watched. The walls seemed to whisper, and a low groan echoed through the room, reverberating in her bones. A figure appeared at the edge of her vision, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it came. Her heart raced, and instinctively, she backed away from the trunk, feeling a deep sense of foreboding. Mia knew she had crossed a threshold, stepping into a realm where the past entwined with the present. Whatever had happened to Eliza, whatever darkness lay hidden in the walls, was no longer just a story. It was alive and aware of her presence. Determined to face her fears, Mia took a step forward. "I'm here to help you, Eliza," she whispered, hoping her words would bridge the gap between the living and the dead. "Tell me what happened. I need to know." In that moment, the air grew electric, charged with an unseen force. The shadows shifted, and she felt a rush of emotions flood her mind: grief, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of loss. It was as if Eliza's spirit was reaching out to her, urging her to uncover the truth, to set her free. Mia closed her eyes, allowing herself to be enveloped by the emotions swirling around her. The whispers grew louder, forming words that reverberated in her mind. "Find him. You must find him." The urgency of the message ignited a fire within her. She had to locate Charles, to confront him and uncover the truth about Eliza's disappearance. With a deep breath, Mia gathered her resolve. As the shadows danced around her, she felt a sense of empowerment. The mysteries of the past were no longer just whispers. They were a call to action. She knew she would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. That night, after researching every possible lead on Charles, Mia found an address linked to him. It was an old house on the outskirts of town, rumored to be haunted itself. Determined to confront the man who might hold the key to Eliza's fate, she prepared herself for what lay ahead. Mia felt the weight of the locket in her pocket, a reminder of Eliza's story. She would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As she stood before the mirror, she whispered, "I'll find you, Eliza. I promise." With that vow echoing in her heart, she settled into bed, ready to face whatever awaited her. She drifted off to sleep with the images of the past dancing in her mind, the voice urging her onward, a guide through the darkness. As dawn broke, Mia felt a surge of determination coursing through her veins. The sunlight poured into her apartment, illuminating the hidden room and casting long shadows on the walls. She had spent countless hours piecing together Eliza's story, and now it was time to confront Charles, the man who had once haunted the edges of her life like a specter. After a quick breakfast, she gathered her belongings and prepared for the journey to the address she had uncovered. The old house was located on the outskirts of town, a place shrouded in mystery and rumor. With each passing moment, the gravity of her mission weighed heavier on her heart. She knew she was stepping into the unknown, but there was no turning back now. The truth beckoned her. The drive to the house was filled with a sense of foreboding. The trees lining the road seemed to stretch their gnarled branches like skeletal hands, and the clouds overhead hung low, casting a gray pallor over everything. As she approached the house, an unsettling chill crept up her spine. The building loomed before her, its peeling paint and broken windows a testament to years of neglect. This was the place where Charles had lived after Eliza's disappearance, a physical manifestation of the darkness that had clouded their lives. Mia parked her car and took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. She felt the locket resting against her chest, a comforting reminder of Eliza's presence. With every step toward the front door, her heart raced faster. She reached the door and knocked, the sound echoing eerily through the stillness. After a moment that felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, revealing a tall, thin man with unkempt hair and deep-set eyes that seemed to hold a world of sorrow. Mia's breath caught in her throat as she recognized him. This was Charles Hawthorne, the man she had read about, the man whose shadow loomed over Eliza's life. "Mia, isn't it?" he said, his voice a low rasp. "I've been expecting you." The air felt thick with tension as she stepped inside, her eyes scanning the dimly lit interior. The house was filled with clutter, remnants of a life once lived but now abandoned. Shadows danced along the walls, and the oppressive atmosphere weighed heavily on her shoulders. "Why did you come here?" Charles asked, closing the door behind her. His gaze bore into her, a mixture of curiosity and something darker, something unspoken. "I need to know what happened to Eliza," Mia replied, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. "You were the last one to see her. What did you do?" Charles's expression shifted, a flicker of pain flashing across his features. "You don't understand," he said, his voice trembling. "I loved her. I would never hurt her. But there were things I couldn't control." "Then tell me what happened." Mia pressed, desperation creeping into her tone. "I've seen the letters, the obsession. You were consumed by it." The room fell silent, and Charles looked away, the weight of his memories pressing heavily upon him. "I wanted to protect her," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I was lost. The night she disappeared, I saw something I wasn't meant to see." "What did you see?" Mia urged, stepping closer, her heart racing as the shadows around them seemed to close in. Charles hesitated, as if the words were trapped in his throat. "I saw her with someone else," he finally confessed, anguish etched on his face. "She was with a man, a stranger. I followed them, thinking I could protect her. But then, I lost sight of them." "Where did they go?" Mia asked, her mind racing. "I don't know," Charles replied, shaking his head. "I searched for hours. When I returned home, she was gone. I thought I could find her, that I could bring her back. But I couldn't." Mia felt a wave of sympathy wash over her, but she couldn't ignore the darkness that still lingered in the air. "What about the hidden room?" she pressed. "Why did you hide it?" Charles's gaze dropped to the floor, and he looked as though he was fighting against a tidal wave of emotions. "I thought she might come back," he admitted, his voice cracking. "I thought if I kept her things close, I could hold on to her memory. But it became a prison, a reminder of what I had lost." The weight of his confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Mia felt a mix of anger and compassion swirling within her. "You should have sought help, Charles," she said softly. "You can't keep living in the past." "I know," he replied, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "But I was terrified of losing her forever. And now, I've lost everything." Mia sensed a shift in the atmosphere, an energy that crackled around them. "Eliza needs closure," she said gently. "You have to let her go." In that moment, the shadows in the room seemed to shift and swirl, as if acknowledging her words. The air thickened, and a low hum resonated in the background, echoing with the whispers of the past. Mia turned her gaze toward the corner of the room, and for a fleeting instant, she thought she saw Eliza's figure standing there, her expression a mixture of sorrow and longing. "Let her know you're ready to move on," Mia urged, her heart racing. "You can't hold on to her any longer. She needs to find peace." Charles's eyes widened as he looked at Mia, realization dawning upon him. "You're right," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I've been so selfish. I thought I could keep her close, but I was only trapping her in my pain." With newfound determination, Charles stepped forward, his face resolute. "I need to make things right," he declared, his voice steady. "I want to help you find her. We can uncover the truth together." Mia nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. Together, they would confront the past and bring Eliza the closure she deserved. The shadows that had once felt oppressive now seemed to shift, swirling around them like a protective cloak. As they left the house, Mia felt an overwhelming sense of release. The weight of secrets that had long been buried was finally beginning to lift. Together, they would face whatever awaited them, and Mia was determined to uncover the truth behind Eliza's disappearance once and for all. Later that evening, they returned to Mia's apartment, the atmosphere charged with anticipation. She led Charles to the hidden room, her heart pounding as they stepped inside. The air felt alive, crackling with energy as they prepared to unearth the secrets that had lain dormant for so long. "Here," Mia said, pointing to the trunk. "This is where it all began." Charles knelt beside the trunk, his expression a mix of sorrow and determination. "We'll find her," he promised, his voice steady. As they began to sift through the contents of the trunk together, the shadows seemed to coalesce, forming a presence that enveloped them. It was as if Eliza was guiding their hands, urging them to reveal the truth. With each item they uncovered, Mia felt a connection to Eliza deepening. The photographs, letters, and sketches whispered stories that had long been silenced, revealing the love, loss, and heartbreak that had woven their lives together. Suddenly, Mia stumbled upon a small, ornate box hidden in the corner of the trunk. Intrigued, she lifted it out, brushing the dust off its surface. The box was intricately carved, and her heart raced as she opened it, revealing a delicate necklace, a locket much like the one she had found earlier. Inside the locket was a small photograph of Eliza, smiling radiantly. But there was more, a tiny, faded note tucked away, its ink barely legible. With trembling hands, Mia unfolded it, her heart pounding in her chest. "I am always with you," it read, "no matter where you go." Tears filled Mia's eyes as she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. Eliza was here, reaching out to them from beyond the veil of time. In that moment, the air crackled with energy, and the shadows around them seemed to pulse in rhythm with their hearts. Charles placed his hand on Mia's shoulder, his voice filled with reverence. "She's still with us," he said softly. "We just need to listen." Mia nodded, understanding the weight of his words. They would uncover Eliza's truth together, and in doing so, they would allow her spirit to find peace. With renewed determination, they continued their search, ready to face whatever revelations awaited them. As the hours passed, Mia and Charles uncovered more fragments of Eliza's life. Each item, each letter, a piece of the puzzle that had kept her spirit bound to the past. And with every revelation, Mia felt the connection between them growing stronger, a bond forged in the fires of love and loss. As night fell, Mia realized they had stumbled upon something far more significant than a mere investigation. They were uncovering the essence of Eliza, the laughter she shared, the dreams she had, and the love that had once flourished in the shadows. Suddenly, a soft voice echoed through the room, a gentle whisper that sent shivers down Mia's spine. "Thank you," it seemed to say, filling the air with warmth. The shadows around them shimmered, dancing in delight, as if Eliza's spirit had finally found a moment of solace. Mia closed her eyes, allowing the moment to wash over her. They had done it. They had brought Eliza back to life in their memories, honoring her story and setting her free. The weight of the past lifted, leaving behind a sense of lightness that filled the room. As dawn approached, Mia knew this was only the beginning. She had uncovered the truth behind the hidden room, and in doing so, she had forged a new connection with Eliza and Charles, a connection rooted in understanding and healing. Mia glanced at Charles, who met her gaze with a look of understanding. They had both been touched by Eliza's spirit, and together they would continue to honor her memory. As the first light of morning filtered through the window, Mia felt a sense of hope blooming within her. No longer haunted by the shadows of the past, she was ready to embrace the future. With Charles by her side, she would carry Eliza's story into the world, ensuring that her memory would never fade away. And as they stood in the light of a new day, the whispers of the past became a gentle echo, reminding them that some stories, no matter how hidden, would always find a way to shine through the darkness. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the city as Clara received an unexpected message. It was from her old friend, Jason, whom she hadn't spoken to in years. The message was cryptic, simply inviting her to meet him at an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. Despite her unease, curiosity gnawed at her. Clara had heard whispers about the building, an old textile factory that had been shut down decades ago. Rumors surrounded it, stories of strange occurrences and unsettling sightings that kept locals at bay. But those were just stories, right? She felt a thrill of adventure at the thought of exploring the forgotten structure. She agreed to meet Jason there, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. The day was warm, but an unseasonable chill hung in the air as she drove to the site. Trees lined the gravel road leading up to the building, their branches swaying ominously in the breeze. When Clara arrived, the sight before her sent a shiver down her spine. The factory loomed like a silent giant, its windows shattered and walls cloaked in vines. The structure appeared to sag under the weight of its own history, the faded sign out front reading Mason and Company. Textiles. Clara felt an unsettling energy radiating from the place, as if the building itself were alive and watching her. As she stepped out of her car, the crunch of gravel underfoot echoed in the stillness. She glanced around, but there was no sign of Jason. Heart racing, she called out his name, her voice swallowed by the eerie quiet. "Jason? Are you here?" No answer. Taking a deep breath, Clara moved closer to the entrance, the air thick with the scent of dampness and decay. The door hung ajar, creaking slightly as she pushed it open, revealing a dark interior that seemed to pulse with hidden secrets. A part of her screamed to turn back, but the other part, driven by curiosity, compelled her to venture inside. The dim light filtering through the broken windows illuminated a vast expanse of empty space. Machinery lay abandoned, covered in layers of dust, remnants of a time long gone. Clara felt a rush of nostalgia for an era she had never known, mixed with an unsettling feeling that she wasn't alone. "Jason," she called again, her voice wavering as it echoed in the silence. She stepped further inside, her heart pounding in her chest. The shadows seemed to flicker at the edges of her vision, and she shook her head, trying to dispel the unease creeping over her. Then, she heard it, a soft sound, almost like a whisper, coming from the back of the building. Her breath caught in her throat as she hesitated, glancing back at the door. Fear gripped her, but the whispering curiosity urged her forward. She took a step, then another, the air growing heavier with each movement. As Clara navigated through the remnants of the factory, she stumbled upon a room filled with what appeared to be old photographs. The walls were lined with framed pictures, each one depicting workers from a different era. Their faces were solemn, eyes staring blankly ahead, as if they were frozen in time. She moved closer to examine them, feeling an odd connection to the lives captured within the frames. But as she scanned the room, one photograph caught her attention. It was a group of workers standing in front of the factory, but something about it felt off. In the background, a shadowy figure loomed, its features indistinct yet haunting. Clara squinted at the image, her heart racing. The figure seemed to be watching the camera, its presence sending chills down her spine. She felt an inexplicable pull to uncover more about this building's past. Suddenly, she heard a loud crash from deeper within the factory, breaking the heavy silence. The sound reverberated through the space, causing her heart to leap into her throat. "Jason," she called out again, panic rising within her. She hesitated, torn between fear and the urge to find her friend. The whispers of the past echoed around her, urging her to leave, yet a flicker of determination ignited inside her. She had to know what was going on. Taking a deep breath, Clara steeled herself and ventured deeper into the building. The air grew colder, and the shadows thickened, wrapping around her like a shroud. With each step, she felt a sense of foreboding wash over her, but she pressed on, desperate to find Jason and uncover the truth behind the abandoned factory. As Clara ventured further into the heart of the factory, the light faded, swallowed by the darkness that enveloped her. Each step echoed in the vast emptiness, amplifying the sense of isolation that clung to her like a heavy fog. She moved cautiously, her senses heightened, acutely aware of every creak and groan of the old building. After what felt like an eternity of navigating through corridors lined with peeling paint and shattered glass, Clara stumbled upon a room that seemed different from the others. The door was slightly ajar, and a dim light flickered from within. She could hear muffled voices, sending a jolt of hope through her. "Jason," she whispered, pushing the door open wider. The room was filled with dusty furniture and broken machinery, but what caught her attention was a flickering light emanating from an old lamp sitting atop a dilapidated table. Clara stepped inside, squinting to adjust to the dim light, her heart pounding with anticipation. To her surprise, she found not Jason, but a group of people huddled together, their faces illuminated by the faint glow. They looked startled at her entrance, and Clara immediately recognized the expressions of fear and suspicion. "Who are you?" one of the men demanded, his voice harsh and defensive. Clara raised her hands in a gesture of peace, trying to calm the tension in the room. "I'm Clara. I came here to meet my friend, Jason. Have you seen him?" The man exchanged glances with the others, his expression softening slightly. "We haven't seen anyone else. This place is dangerous." "Dangerous?" Clara echoed, glancing around at the group. They appeared to be a mix of locals and urban explorers, their clothing scuffed and worn. "What do you mean?" Another woman, with wild hair and anxious eyes, stepped forward. "This building has a history, dark history. It's said to be haunted. People have gone missing here, and strange things happen all the time." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard the rumors, but now they seemed much more real. "I have to find Jason," she insisted, trying to suppress the fear threatening to bubble over. "Listen," the first man said, his tone shifting to one of urgency. "If you want to survive, you need to leave now. The stories are true. We've experienced things we can't explain." Before Clara could respond, a loud crash echoed from the hallway behind her, followed by the sound of shuffling footsteps. The group froze, their faces pale with terror. Clara turned, her heart racing as the sound grew closer. "Quick, we need to hide," the woman urged, gesturing toward a closet at the back of the room. Clara didn't hesitate. She scrambled into the cramped space, the others following suit. They squeezed together, the darkness enveloping them as they pressed against the cold walls. Inside the closet, Clara could hear her heartbeat pounding in her ears, drowning out the sounds from outside. The footsteps grew louder, and she held her breath, praying that whatever was out there wouldn't find them. Minutes felt like hours as they waited in the stifling darkness. Clara's mind raced with questions. What was happening? Where was Jason? The air felt heavy, thick with anticipation, and the overwhelming sense of dread clawed at her insides. Suddenly, the door to the room creaked open, and Clara could see a sliver of light. A figure entered, silhouetted against the dimness. It moved with an unnatural grace, its form flickering like a flame. Clara's stomach knotted as she realized it was not a person. It was something else entirely. The figure glided around the room, its presence sending chills coursing through her veins. Clara squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the sight. She could hear the hushed whispers of the group beside her, their breath shallow and quick. "What is it?" one of them whispered, panic lacing their voice. "I don't know," Clara murmured, her own voice trembling. "But we have to wait for it to leave." The entity continued to roam the room, pausing intermittently as if searching for something or someone. Clara felt her pulse quicken as the figure stopped directly in front of the closet, the air growing colder as it seemed to stare right through the door. Just when Clara thought she couldn't bear it any longer, the figure turned and glided away, disappearing into the shadows. The group held their breaths until the sound of footsteps faded into silence. After what felt like an eternity, Clara opened the closet door, peering out cautiously. The room was empty, but the atmosphere felt charged with an unsettling energy. "Did you see that?" the wild-haired woman asked, her eyes wide. "What was that thing?" "I don't know," Clara replied, shaking her head. "But we need to find Jason and get out of here." The others nodded in agreement, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. They stepped into the main room, the unsettling silence hanging thick in the air. Clara's heart raced as she tried to piece together the puzzle of the building's dark history and the presence they had just encountered. "We should search for him together," the man suggested. "There's strength in numbers. If there's something lurking here, we need to be cautious." As they moved cautiously through the building, Clara's thoughts raced. The haunting whispers of the factory echoed in her mind, mingling with the chilling memories of the figure they had just seen. Something about the abandoned building felt alive, as if the walls held secrets yearning to be uncovered. With each room they explored, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Shadows danced along the walls, and the air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Then, in a distant corner of the factory, Clara spotted a flicker of movement. "There," she shouted, pointing. "I think I saw someone." The group turned, eyes wide with urgency. Clara rushed forward, her heart pounding as she dashed toward the light. She could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, pushing her to find Jason and escape the factory's grasp. As they approached the source of the light, Clara's heart raced. The fear of what lay ahead mingled with a fierce determination to uncover the truth. "Jason," she called out again, her voice echoing in the desolate space. But as they rounded the corner, what awaited them would change everything. The flickering light intensified as Clara and the group moved closer, illuminating the remnants of what used to be a bustling factory. Dust motes danced in the air, caught in the beam of light, creating an almost ethereal atmosphere. Clara's pulse quickened. She could feel something significant was about to happen. As they entered the room, the sight that greeted them was both shocking and perplexing. In the center stood a makeshift workstation cluttered with old photographs, blueprints, and other forgotten artifacts. It looked like someone had been living there, and Clara's heart sank as she recognized one of the photographs. "Is that?" she began, stepping closer. The photograph showed a group of people standing in front of the factory, their smiles frozen in time. Among them was a familiar face, Jason. "Clara." Jason's voice echoed from the shadows, pulling her attention away from the photo. He stepped out from behind a pile of debris, looking disheveled but alive. Relief washed over her, and she rushed to him, wrapping her arms around him tightly. "I thought I lost you," Clara exclaimed, pulling back to look at him. "What happened?" "I'm so glad you're here," he replied, his voice shaky. "I've been trying to uncover what's been going on in this place. There's so much I need to tell you." "Tell me now," Clara urged, glancing nervously at the shadows around them. The oppressive air felt thicker, as if the building itself was listening. "What's happening?" Jason took a deep breath, clearly shaken. "When I got here, I started hearing things, voices, whispers. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but then I found these." He gestured to the table cluttered with papers. "I realize this place holds dark secrets about its past, about the people who worked here." Clara scanned the room, her eyes falling on a series of documents detailing incidents from decades ago. "What do you mean?" "There were accidents, disappearances, people vanishing without a trace. Some say it's haunted because of the workers who died here," Jason explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think whatever happened to them is still here, lingering in the walls." Suddenly, a loud bang resonated through the room, causing Clara to jump. The air grew cold, and the shadows seemed to deepen around them. "Clara, we have to leave," Jason urged, grabbing her arm. But Clara couldn't tear her gaze away from the table. "Wait, what's this?" She pointed to a dusty notebook lying among the papers. It looked old and worn, its pages yellowed with age. Jason hesitated, glancing between the notebook and the door. "It's not safe, Clara. We need to go now." "Just a quick look," she insisted, gently prying the notebook open. The pages were filled with frantic handwriting, detailing strange occurrences and eerie experiences. Clara's heart raced as she read entries about sightings of a figure resembling a worker, haunting the halls at night. "Look at this," she said, her voice trembling with excitement. They wrote about a ghost that lingers here, seeking revenge for their tragic fate. Jason leaned over her shoulder, his expression shifting from fear to intrigue. "What else does it say?" Clara flipped through the pages, her breath hitching as she found a specific entry dated years ago. This one mentions the factory's last owner, a man named Arthur Hawthorne. He was rumored to have mistreated his workers, leading to a series of tragic events. Suddenly, the temperature in the room plummeted, and a palpable sense of dread filled the air. The lights flickered violently, casting erratic shadows against the walls. "Clara, we need to go," Jason shouted, pulling her back. "Now!" Clara closed the notebook and tucked it under her arm, feeling an inexplicable urge to uncover more. "But what about the others?" she pleaded. "We can't just leave without knowing the full story." "I'll come back for it, I promise," Jason replied urgently. "But we have to get out of here before it's too late." Just then, the door slammed shut, trapping them inside the room. Clara's heart sank as she rushed to the door, frantically pulling on the handle. "It won't budge," she exclaimed, panic rising in her chest. "Stay calm," Jason said, glancing around for another way out. "We need to find another exit." As they searched for a window or a back door, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. The shadows seemed to writhe and shift around them, whispering secrets that she could almost hear. "Did you hear that?" Clara whispered, her voice shaking. Jason nodded, his face pale. We need to move quickly. I don't want to find out what's lurking here. Finally, they spotted a small window at the far end of the room, partially ajar. There, Clara pointed, relief washing over her. They hurried towards it, but as they approached, the atmosphere grew heavier. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony of voices, chilling Clara to her core. Let us out. We can't stay here, Jason yelled, pushing against the window frame. As they struggled, Clara glanced back at the desk filled with the photographs and notebooks. It was then she noticed something unusual. One of the photos showed a worker standing eerily close to the building, his eyes dark and hollow. Wait, Jason, she said suddenly, her heart racing. This worker, he looks like the figure we saw earlier. I know, Jason replied, glancing back at the photo. It must be one of the spirits trapped in this place. Clara's mind raced as she pieced together the horrifying reality. If these spirits are connected to Arthur Hawthorne, we might have a way to set them free. What do you mean? Jason asked, still trying to pry open the window. The notebook mentions a ritual to release the spirits. We need to find it, she urged, her resolve strengthening. With renewed determination, they turned back to the cluttered table, searching for the crucial information that could unlock the door to their escape. Clara's fingers danced over the papers, adrenaline fueling her urgency. Here, she exclaimed, pulling out a page filled with cryptic instructions. This might be it. As Clara read through the instructions, the atmosphere shifted again, the whispers turning into a deafening roar. The lights flickered ominously, and the temperature dropped to an unbearable chill. Clara, we don't have much time, Jason shouted, urgency lacing his voice. Let's do it, Clara replied, steeling herself. If we can perform this ritual, we might just save ourselves and the spirits trapped here. They quickly set to work, gathering the materials mentioned in the instructions. Clara's hands trembled as she realized the weight of what they were attempting. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a tempest, but she pushed through the fear. Okay, we need to light this candle, she said, her voice steady. It symbolizes the light that can guide the spirits home. With a shaky breath, Clara lit the candle, its flame flickering defiantly against the encroaching darkness. The room felt charged with energy, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Now what? Jason asked, glancing around nervously as the shadows grew closer. Now we recite this incantation, Clara said, her heart racing as she began to read from the notebook. The words flowed from her lips, a haunting melody that resonated within the walls of the factory. As she spoke, the whispers transformed into anguished cries, echoing around them. The candle flickered wildly, illuminating the faces of the trapped spirits, faces filled with sorrow and longing. The temperature dropped even further, and Clara felt an otherworldly presence gathering around them. Keep going, Jason urged, his voice firm. As Clara continued the incantation, the shadows coalesced into a swirling mass, forming a figure, a tall man with hollow eyes and a menacing glare. It was Arthur Hawthorne, his presence suffocating the air. You dare to disturb my domain? He hissed, his voice a chilling whisper. Clara's heart raced as she held the candle high, the light flickering defiantly against the darkness. We seek to release the spirits bound to this place, she shouted, her voice stronger than she felt. Arthur's form twisted and writhed in the shadows, anger radiating from him. You will pay for this intrusion. But Clara pressed on, her voice rising above the chaos as she recited the final words of the incantation. The air crackled with energy, and the spirits around her began to swirl, their cries mingling with the tempestuous winds. Let them go, Jason shouted, stepping beside Clara, determination etched on his face. As Clara finished the incantation, a blinding light erupted from the candle, illuminating the room and casting away the darkness. The spirits began to rise, their anguished faces transforming into expressions of relief and gratitude. The swirling shadows around Arthur Hawthorne twisted violently as the light grew brighter. With a final anguished scream, the figure disintegrated into the darkness, leaving only silence in his wake. As the light faded and the whispers subsided, Clara and Jason stood in the now empty room, their breaths heavy with disbelief. The weight of the factory lifted, and the air felt lighter. "We did it," Clara whispered, still in shock. Clara stood in the dim light, her heart racing as she looked around the now quiet room. The tension that had clung to the air just moments ago was gone, replaced by an unsettling stillness. Jason was at her side, both of them catching their breaths after the chaos they had just endured. "Did we really just do that?" Clara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Did we really free them?" Jason nodded, still processing the whirlwind of events. "I think so. The air feels different now, lighter." But even as he spoke, a lingering doubt crept into Clara's mind. What if they hadn't freed everyone? What if Arthur was still lurking in the shadows, waiting to strike back? The thought made her shiver, and she pulled her jacket tighter around her shoulders. "Let's check the room again," Jason suggested, his voice steadying. "We need to be sure. If we missed anything, we can't risk leaving it behind." Together, they began to comb through the remnants of the workstation, searching for any additional clues or artifacts that could provide insight into the factory's dark past. Clara felt drawn to the notebook she had discovered earlier, its pages filled with frantic notes and sketches. "Look at this," she said, flipping through the pages. "There's more here about Arthur and the accidents that happened. It says he was never held accountable for what he did." "Of course not," Jason replied, scanning the room for anything unusual. "People like him never are. But the spirits, they must have wanted justice." Clara paused, reflecting on the weight of Jason's words. "Do you think they're finally at peace now?" Jason turned to her, his expression serious. "I hope so, but I can't shake the feeling that we've only scratched the surface of this place's history." Suddenly, a creaking sound echoed through the room, making both of them jump. Clara's heart raced as she turned to face the source of the noise. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jason nodded, his eyes darting toward the door. "Yeah, it came from outside the room." They exchanged worried glances, both aware that their encounter with the darkness might not yet be over. "We should check it out," Clara suggested, her curiosity piquing despite the fear knotting her stomach. As they approached the door, Clara could feel the weight of the atmosphere pressing in on them. The once familiar sounds of the factory now felt foreign and eerie. The creaking echoed again, this time louder, as if something, or someone, was waiting just beyond the door. "Are you ready?" Jason asked, his voice steady, but his eyes revealing the fear beneath. "Let's do this," Clara replied, her resolve hardening. She took a deep breath and pushed the door open, the hinges protesting as they swung wide. The hallway beyond was dimly lit, the air thick with dust and an unsettling silence. Clara stepped into the corridor, her heart pounding in her chest. Shadows danced along the walls, and she felt a chill creep up her spine. "Stay close," Jason urged, following closely behind her. As they made their way down the hallway, Clara noticed a door at the end that was slightly ajar, a faint light spilling out into the darkness. Her instinct screamed at her to turn back, but her curiosity pushed her forward. "What if we find something important?" she whispered, glancing back at Jason. "Or we find something we wish we hadn't," he replied, a nervous smile tugging at his lips. Clara reached the door and hesitated for a moment, steeling herself. With a quick glance back at Jason, she pushed the door open further and stepped inside. The room was small and cluttered, filled with dusty furniture and forgotten relics. The light source flickered from a small lamp sitting on a table in the corner. As Clara stepped further inside, she felt an overwhelming sense of unease. "Clara," Jason began, his voice low and cautious. But she barely heard him. Her attention was drawn to a large mirror hanging on the wall opposite her. It was ornate, framed in an intricate design, and seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Clara approached it, feeling a magnetic pull that made her heart race. "Do you see this?" she called to Jason, who was lingering near the door. He stepped closer, his brows furrowed in concern. "What's so special about it?" "I don't know," Clara replied, her eyes locked on her reflection. "But something feels off." Suddenly, she noticed something move in the corner of the mirror. Clara squinted, her breath catching in her throat. It was a shadowy figure, hovering just behind her own reflection. "Jason," she gasped, taking a step back. "There's someone in the mirror." He rushed to her side, his eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" Clara pointed at the mirror, but the figure had vanished. The glass now showed only their reflections, looking startled and pale. "I swear I saw something," she insisted, her heart racing. Jason glanced at the mirror, then back at Clara, concern etched on his face. "Maybe it's just a trick of the light. This place is playing games with our minds." But Clara shook her head, unwilling to dismiss what she had seen. "No, I know what I saw. We need to find out what's happening here." Determined, Clara reached for the mirror's edge, feeling an inexplicable urge to touch it. As her fingers brushed the surface, a surge of energy coursed through her, sending a shockwave of sensation down her spine. "Clara, don't!" Jason shouted, grabbing her wrist. But it was too late. The moment she touched the mirror, the world around her blurred. She felt as if she were being pulled into the glass, the room around her twisting and warping. "Clara!" Jason cried, trying to pull her back. But the energy enveloped her, and in an instant, everything went dark. When Clara opened her eyes again, she found herself in a different place, a dimly lit room that felt eerily familiar. The air was thick with tension, and a strange noise echoed in the distance. "Where am I?" she whispered, looking around in confusion. Suddenly, the figure reappeared, standing just a few feet away. It was a man, his features obscured by shadows, but Clara recognized the same hollow eyes she had seen in the factory. "Welcome," he said, his voice a haunting whisper that sent chills down her spine. Clara took a step back, her heart racing. "Who are you? What do you want?" "I am the keeper of this place," he replied, his voice echoing through the room. "You have awakened the spirits trapped here." "Spirits?" Clara repeated, her mind racing. "What do you mean?" "The factory is a vessel for lost souls," he explained, his voice resonating with an ancient sorrow. "You were foolish to meddle with the past. Now you must face the consequences." "Consequences?" Clara's voice trembled with fear. "What do you want from me?" The man's shadowy form shifted, and Clara felt a wave of energy crash over her. "You seek the truth, but truth comes at a cost." "Please," she begged, her fear rising. "I just want to understand what happened here." The figure raised a hand, and Clara felt herself being pulled closer. "To understand, you must experience the pain of those who suffered." "No," she cried, trying to break free, but it was too late. The room around her faded, and she was plunged into darkness once more, her consciousness swirling in an abyss of memories. She was transported to scenes of despair, watching as workers toiled in the factory under the oppressive gaze of Arthur Hawthorne. She saw their fear, their anguish, as accidents and tragedies struck without warning. "Why are you showing me this?" Clara shouted, tears streaming down her face. "This is terrible. You must feel their pain to understand their plight." The man's voice echoed around her. "Only then can you help them find peace." As the memories flooded her, Clara felt their grief engulf her. She watched the workers' lives unravel, their hopes dashed by the cruelty of the man who owned their labor. She saw shadows of despair clawing at their souls, and Clara realized how deeply the factory's history was intertwined with suffering. In that moment, she understood the weight of the past and the darkness that had seeped into the very foundation of the building. She could feel their anguish wrap around her, merging with her own. "Please let them go," Clara screamed, desperation coursing through her. "I want to help." "You must confront the darkness that binds them," the figure said, his voice resonating with a haunting finality. "Face the truth, and you may yet free their souls." With that, the darkness enveloped Clara once more, and she felt herself being pulled back into the mirror. Clara emerged from the mirror, gasping for air. She was back in the factory room, Jason's concerned face looming over her. "Clara, are you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with worry. "What happened?" she panted, disoriented. "I don't know," Jason replied, kneeling beside her. "You just disappeared. What did you see?" Clara struggled to gather her thoughts, the memories of the past still fresh in her mind. "The keeper, he showed me everything. The suffering, the pain, it's all connected to Arthur." Jason's expression turned grave. "So, We need to confront him. He's the source of the darkness. But how? Clara asked, the weight of their task pressing heavily on her. We have to find a way to channel the energy of the spirits, Jason suggested, his eyes narrowing in determination. If we can tap into their anger, their sorrow, we can confront Arthur and force him to release them. Clara nodded, her resolve solidifying. But we need to find something of his, something that can anchor us to the confrontation. Jason stood up, scanning the room. What about that desk? There might be something hidden there. Together, they rummaged through the desk's drawers, searching for clues that could help them in their quest. As they pulled out old papers and rusty tools, Clara's fingers brushed against something cold, a small, ornate key. Look at this, she exclaimed, holding it up. It's beautiful. Do you think it's important? Jason examined it closely. It could be. It looks like it belongs to something significant. Let's keep it just in case. With their newfound resolve, Clara and Jason moved toward the entrance of the factory. The air felt thick with anticipation, and Clara could sense the spirits lingering, waiting for their chance to be free. As they stepped outside, the atmosphere shifted. A chill swept through the air, and Clara felt the presence of Arthur lurking nearby, his dark energy palpable. Arthur, Clara called out, her voice steady. We know what you've done. It's time to end this. The wind howled in response, and Clara could see shadows forming around her. Arthur's figure emerged from the darkness, a menacing smile spreading across his face. You think you can challenge me? He taunted, his voice echoing with disdain. You're nothing but children playing with forces you cannot comprehend. Clara stood firm, determination coursing through her. We're here to free the spirits you've tormented. You can't keep them trapped any longer. Arthur's laughter filled the air, a chilling sound that sent shivers down her spine. You think you have the power? You're just like the others, foolish and naive. With a wave of his hand, shadows swirled around him, forming tendrils that reached for Clara and Jason. Clara felt the energy of the spirits surge within her, their anger igniting her resolve. Jason, she shouted, her voice fierce. Now! Together, they raised the key above their heads, channeling the energy of the spirits around them. The shadows recoiled at their resolve, and Clara felt the air crackle with power. Release them, Arthur, she commanded, her voice ringing out with authority. The darkness flickered as Arthur's expression shifted from arrogance to confusion. What is this? You cannot. Together, we can do this, Jason shouted, standing by Clara's side. For the spirits. As the key glowed with an ethereal light, Clara felt the memories of the past flooding back. Lives lost, dreams shattered. The spirits surged around them, a cacophony of voices rising in unity. No, this is impossible, Arthur roared, his figure trembling as the shadows writhed in protest. Clara and Jason stood firm, the key pulsing with energy as they faced the darkness head-on. The air was charged with tension, the weight of the spirits' pain pressing against them. Let them go, Clara screamed, and with one final push, they thrust the key forward. The light erupted, engulfing Arthur in a blinding brilliance. His screams filled the air as the shadows began to dissipate, pulled away by the force of the spirit's liberation. Clara felt a rush of energy wash over her, the weight of despair lifting as the darkness unraveled. As the last remnants of Arthur vanished, the factory fell silent. Clara stood in the aftermath, breathless and shaken, yet a sense of peace washed over her. The spirits were finally free. Did we do it? Jason asked, disbelief flickering in his eyes. Clara nodded slowly, tears of relief spilling down her cheeks. I think we did. Together, they stepped out of the factory, the sun breaking through the clouds above. Clara felt the warmth on her skin, a symbol of hope and renewal. The darkness had been vanquished, and with it, the spirits could finally rest. As they walked away from the factory, Clara turned back one last time, feeling a sense of closure. The weight of the past had been lifted, and she knew they had made a difference. Thank you, she whispered, a prayer for the souls they had freed. And as the light of a new day embraced them, Clara understood that while the past would always remain a part of her, it no longer held her captive. The journey had changed her, and now she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. Emma had always been a dreamer, lost in her thoughts and fantasies. But recently, her dreams had taken a dark turn. Each night, she found herself trapped in a terrifying nightmare, a twisted landscape filled with shadows and whispers that echoed in her mind long after she awoke. It was a world where time lost all meaning, and every corner hid an unspeakable dread. In the nightmare, she wandered through a fog-covered forest, the trees looming like giants, their branches clawing at the sky. The air was thick with an unnatural silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or a distant, eerie wail. No matter how hard she tried to escape, the forest seemed endless, each path leading her deeper into its malevolent embrace. Just a dream, she would remind herself each morning as she shook off the remnants of fear. But as the days turned into weeks, the line between reality and the nightmare began to blur. The haunting whispers that haunted her nights seeped into her days, lingering in the back of her mind like an unwelcome guest. It was a Friday evening when the nightmares escalated. Emma was preparing for bed, the familiar sensations of dread creeping back into her chest. She brushed her hair in front of the mirror, trying to shake off the feeling that something was different this time. As she turned off the light and crawled under the covers, she felt a shiver run down her spine. Her bedroom was bathed in darkness, the only sound the soft rustle of her sheets. She closed her eyes, hoping for a peaceful night's sleep, but the moment she drifted off, she found herself back in the forest. The trees loomed closer this time, their twisted branches seeming to reach out for her. The air was heavy, laden with an unshakable sense of dread. Emma pressed on, desperate to escape the shadows that lurked just beyond her vision. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a storm. "Help me," a voice called, thin and desperate. Emma stopped in her tracks, her heart racing. "Please help me." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing in the darkness. Emma looked around, fear tightening her throat. "Who are you?" she called out, hoping for a response. But all she heard was the wind rustling through the leaves, mocking her. The shadows shifted, and she felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. She had to find the source of the voice. It was as if something was pulling her deeper into the forest, urging her to confront whatever lay within. With every step, the landscape twisted and warped around her. Trees bent at odd angles, and the ground seemed to shift beneath her feet. Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she pressed on, the whispers growing more frantic. "Please don't leave me." The voice grew louder, more desperate. "Where are you?" Emma shouted, panic rising. "I'm coming." As she pushed through the thick underbrush, a glimmer of light appeared in the distance. Hope surged within her. Maybe this was the way out. Maybe she could finally escape the nightmare that had become her reality. But as she approached the light, dread settled over her like a cold blanket. The air felt charged, heavy with an unseen force. The whispers turned into anguished cries, filling the air with despair. Emma stumbled back, the light flickering as if it were alive, beckoning her closer even as her instincts screamed to run. "Help!" The voice called again, but this time it was accompanied by a chilling laughter that sent a shiver down her spine. "Who are you?" Emma shouted into the darkness, her courage wavering. As if in response, the light pulsed, and the shadows around her twisted into grotesque shapes. Figures began to emerge, their faces obscured but their intentions clear. They closed in on her, their whispers a cacophony of torment. "No, stay away," Emma cried, turning to run, but the forest seemed to conspire against her. The trees twisted, blocking her path, and she felt the ground give way beneath her. The world spiraled into darkness. Emma awoke with a start, gasping for breath. Her heart raced as she sat up in bed, drenched in sweat. The remnants of the nightmare clung to her like a shroud, the whispers still echoing in her mind. She glanced around her room, desperately trying to ground herself in reality. It was just a dream, she reminded herself, shaking her head. But the feeling of unease lingered, a nagging sensation that wouldn't let her go. She got up and walked to the window, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. The street below was quiet, the only sound the rustling of leaves in the wind. But as she stood there, staring into the darkness, the whispers returned. They were faint at first, barely discernible, but gradually they grew louder. Emma's heart dropped as the voice from her dream pierced through her thoughts. "Help me," it called, a haunting echo that sent chills down her spine. She shook her head, trying to dismiss it, but the voice was insistent. "Please don't leave me. Stop it," Emma shouted, pressing her palms against her ears. But the words slipped through her fingers like water, filling her mind with an overwhelming sense of dread. She turned away from the window, her heart pounding. The moonlight spilled into her room, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. She felt trapped, as if the nightmare had followed her in her waking life. Desperate for distraction, she turned on her bedside lamp and grabbed her phone, scrolling through social media in an attempt to shake off the lingering fear. But the bright screen only seemed to intensify her anxiety, the posts blurring together in a haze of meaningless words. As the minutes ticked by, Emma found herself glancing back at the window, half expecting to see something lurking in the darkness. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. A cold sweat broke out along her skin, and she wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the weight of the silence in the room. When dawn finally broke, Emma felt a flicker of hope. She convinced herself that she had conquered the nightmare, that she was safe in the light of day. She got ready for work, the mundane motions of her routine providing a much-needed distraction. But as she stepped outside, the shadows seemed to linger just beyond her vision, a reminder that the darkness wasn't far away. At work, she struggled to focus, her mind drifting back to the whispers. Each time she caught herself zoning out, she would shake her head, forcing herself to concentrate on the tasks at hand. Her colleagues chatted around her, their voices a distant hum, but she felt disconnected, as if she were watching the world through a foggy window. "Emma, you okay?" her friend Sarah asked, concern etched on her face. "Yeah, just a rough night," Emma replied, forcing a smile. "Want to grab coffee later? I think you could use a break." Emma nodded, grateful for the invitation. As the day dragged on, the thought of spending time with Sarah became a beacon of light in her murky reality. But the moment she returned home that evening, the shadows crept back in. The whispers had grown louder, more demanding. She could almost make out words, fragmented and incoherent, swirling around her like a tempest. "Help us!" Emma clenched her fists, willing the voices to silence. She took a deep breath and decided to confront the terror that had invaded her life. "I will find out what you want," she whispered to the shadows, determination hardening her resolve. "I won't let you take me." That night, Emma prepared herself for bed with a newfound sense of purpose. She refused to let the whispers take control. As she lay in the darkness, she focused on her breathing, steady and calm. The moment she closed her eyes, she felt herself being pulled back into the nightmare. The familiar forest stretched before her, but this time, she was ready. "Show me," she called into the darkness, her voice strong and unwavering. The trees swayed, the shadows shifting, but she stood her ground, her heart pounding with adrenaline. The whispers began to swirl around her, and she felt the pull of the light in the distance. Instead of fear, she felt a strange exhilaration. She stepped forward, each stride bringing her closer to the light that promised answers. "Help us," the voice cried again, but this time it felt more urgent, desperate for release. Emma pushed on, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As Emma ventured deeper into the forest, the trees closed in around her, their gnarled branches forming a twisted canopy that filtered the light, casting eerie shadows on the ground. The whispers grew louder, swirling in her ears like a chorus of lost souls. She felt their pain, their urgency. It was as if they were guiding her toward a truth buried deep within the heart of this nightmare. "Show yourself," she demanded, her voice echoing through the darkened woods. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows pulsed as if responding to her challenge. Emma pushed forward, determined to confront the source of the haunting voice that had haunted her nights. In the distance, she saw a flicker of light, brighter than before, illuminating a small clearing. It was a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness surrounding her. As she approached, the atmosphere changed, becoming heavy with anticipation. The light danced, flickering like a flame, drawing her closer with an almost magnetic pull. But as she neared the clearing, she sensed a shift. The whispers transformed into anguished cries, echoing with despair. Panic surged within her, but she forced herself to stay calm, reminding herself of her purpose. She was here to confront her fears, to find out why these spirits were reaching out to her. "Who are you?" Emma shouted into the clearing, her voice breaking the tension. "What do you want from me?" The light flickered again, and slowly, forms began to materialize within it. Wispy figures emerged, their features indistinct, but their expressions filled with sorrow and longing. They reached out to her, their mouths moving in silent pleas. Emma felt a jolt of recognition, as if she had seen these faces before, in fragments of her dreams or echoes of her past. "Please," one of the figures finally spoke, its voice a haunting melody that resonated with Emma's soul. "You must understand, we are trapped." "Trapped? How?" Emma stepped closer, feeling an inexplicable connection to these lost souls. "What happened to you?" The figures exchanged glances, their expressions shifting to one of shared pain. "A darkness has bound us to this place. We were wronged, our stories buried beneath the weight of forgotten memories. You can help us." Emma's heart raced. She felt a deep sense of purpose, as if her entire life had led to this moment. "Tell me what I need to do. I will help you find peace." One of the figures, a woman with sorrowful eyes, stepped forward. "You must uncover the truth. The answers lie in the memories we left behind. Seek the old house at the edge of the forest. It holds the key to our freedom." The moment the woman spoke, a vision flashed before Emma's eyes. A dilapidated house hidden among the trees, its windows dark and foreboding. She felt an overwhelming urge to find it, to unearth the secrets that lay within its walls. "Where is this house?" Emma asked, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "Follow the path of the fallen leaves," the woman whispered, her voice fading like a distant echo. "It will lead you there. But beware, for the darkness that binds us also seeks to keep you from the truth." Before Emma could respond, the figures began to dissolve, their anguished cries fading into the wind. The light dimmed, and she was once again enveloped in the forest's oppressive shadows. Taking a deep breath, Emma turned away from the clearing and followed the path of fallen leaves that snaked through the trees. Her heart pounded in her chest as she ventured deeper into the woods, the air thick with a palpable tension. Each step felt like a descent into a deeper darkness, but she pressed on, fueled by a determination to uncover the truth. The further she walked, the more she felt the weight of the forest closing in around her. The whispers returned, echoing her thoughts, urging her to turn back. But Emma ignored them, the urgency of her mission pushing her forward. Finally, she stumbled upon a clearing that opened into a small, overgrown path. Vines choked the entrance, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. In the distance, she saw the silhouette of the old house, its dark form looming like a specter against the twilight sky. As she approached, dread washed over her. The house was a haunting sight, its windows shattered and its once vibrant walls faded and cracked. It looked as if it had been forgotten by time, a relic of a past best left undisturbed. But deep down, Emma knew she had to enter. The fate of the lost souls depended on it. She stepped inside, the door creaking ominously as it swung open. Dust motes danced in the air, illuminated by the faint light that filtered through the broken windows. The interior was shrouded in darkness, the shadows deepening as she crossed the threshold. With every step, the weight of history pressed down on her. Memories of the past seemed to linger in the air, whispering their stories to her as she moved through the decaying rooms. Emma felt a chill run down her spine, as if the house itself was alive, watching her every move. "Hello," she called, her voice echoing in the silence. "Is anyone here?" But only silence greeted her in response, the air thick with the scent of mildew and decay. As she ventured deeper into the house, she noticed the walls were lined with faded photographs, faces from a time long gone, their eyes watching her with a mixture of sadness and longing. Each photograph felt like a thread, connecting her to the stories hidden within these walls. She reached out to touch one, feeling an inexplicable connection to the people captured in the image. In that moment, she realized that these faces were part of the same anguish that haunted her nights. With renewed determination, Emma began to explore each room, searching for clues to the truth. She rummaged through old furniture, brushing away dust to reveal forgotten trinkets, a broken music box, a tarnished locket, and a stack of yellowed letters tied with a faded ribbon. As she opened the letters, the words spilled out like a flood, tales of love, loss, and betrayal woven together in a tapestry of sorrow. The more she read, the clearer the picture became. The dark history of this house was intertwined with the fates of the lost souls she had encountered in the forest. Suddenly, she heard a noise, a soft creak echoing from above. Emma's heart raced as she glanced upward, the shadows above her swirling with an unsettling energy. She had come too far to turn back now. Gathering her courage, she climbed the staircase, each step heavy with foreboding. At the top, she found a long, dimly lit hallway. The walls were adorned with more photographs, but these felt different, more alive, as if the souls within them were reaching out to her. Emma felt a pull, an urge to step closer to the end of the hallway where a door stood slightly ajar. Pushing the door open, she found herself in a small room, filled with the remnants of a life once lived. A faded quilt lay across the bed, and an old rocking chair creaked softly in the corner. But it was the mirror that caught her attention, its surface clouded and cracked, reflecting the room in a distorted manner. As she approached the mirror, her heart raced. This was where the truth lay, hidden behind the glass. The whispers grew louder, urging her to look deeper, to confront the darkness that had haunted her. Taking a deep breath, Emma leaned closer to the mirror, peering into its depths. As Emma leaned closer to the mirror, the world around her seemed to blur and fade, swallowed by an inky darkness that clawed at her consciousness. The whispers intensified, swirling around her like a tempest, urging her to look deeper, to see what lay beyond the surface. It was as if the mirror was a portal, beckoning her into a realm where past and present collided. In that moment, Emma's heart raced, a mixture of fear and curiosity coursing through her veins. She pressed her palms against the cool glass, feeling an inexplicable connection to the reflection staring back at her. But it wasn't just her own face that stared back. Shadows danced around her, their forms shifting and contorting as they reached out, as if begging for release. "Show me," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "Show me the truth." Suddenly, the mirror pulsed with energy, and a rush of images flooded her mind. Fragments of memories, pieces of lives long forgotten. She saw glimpses of laughter and joy, but those moments quickly twisted into scenes of despair and betrayal. Faces blurred together, their eyes filled with anguish, their mouths silently screaming for help. Emma felt herself being drawn into the memories, as if the mirror were pulling her into its depths. She gasped as she found herself standing in the very room she had just entered, but it was alive with color and warmth. The walls were adorned with vibrant paintings, and the air was filled with laughter and music. In the corner, a family gathered around a table, their joy infectious. But as she watched, the happiness began to unravel. Arguments erupted, voices rose in anger, and shadows lurked in the corners, watching with predatory glee. Emma felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that the darkness she had sensed in the house was not just a mere presence. It was a living, breathing entity, feeding off the pain and sorrow of those trapped within its grasp. "Stop! You have to stop!" Emma cried out, desperate to intervene, but her voice echoed unheard in this spectral realm. The scene shifted, the family fracturing like glass shattering under pressure. She saw a mother weeping, her heart broken by betrayal. A father's rage consumed him, his eyes wild and desperate. The children, innocent bystanders, were caught in the crossfire, their laughter replaced by tears. With every moment, the shadows grew bolder, swirling around the family like smoke, feeding off their pain. Emma felt the weight of their suffering, and in that moment, she understood. This was the truth she had sought. The house was a vessel of torment, its walls holding the echoes of unresolved conflict and anguish. Desperate to break the cycle, Emma reached out, her hand touching the mirror's surface. "You can't let this happen. You must find peace." As if hearing her plea, the scene shifted again. The family members began to notice the shadows that loomed around them, their expressions turning from anger to confusion. They looked toward Emma, their eyes pleading for understanding, for someone to help them make sense of their pain. "Help us," the mother cried, her voice a haunting melody that resonated with Emma's heart. "We are trapped in this cycle of sorrow. Only you can set us free." Emma felt a surge of determination. "I will help you. I'll uncover the truth, and I won't let this darkness consume you." With that vow echoing in her mind, Emma focused on the mirror, willing the memories to reveal the source of the darkness. The images morphed again, pulling her deeper into the family's past. She witnessed a betrayal, a secret that had festered like an open wound, poisoning their lives. A once happy son, whose jealousy consumed him, plotted against his own family, driven by greed and resentment. Emma felt the weight of his betrayal, a darkness that had seeped into the very foundations of the house, binding the souls of those who had lived there to a fate of eternal suffering. But the power of truth was greater than any shadow. Emma willed herself to speak, her voice echoing with conviction. "You must confront your pain. Only then can you be free." As she spoke, the figures began to glow with an ethereal light, their expressions shifting from despair to determination. They turned to one another, the echoes of their past reverberating through the air. "We must face our darkness together," the father shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. The shadows hissed, recoiling as if burned by the light of their resolve. Emma watched in awe as the family united, their hands linking together, forming a circle of strength against the encroaching darkness. The mirror pulsed, vibrating with energy as the scene intensified. The shadows writhed and twisted, desperate to reclaim their hold on the family. But Emma stood firm, channeling her will into the collective strength of those bound by blood and love. "Together," she urged, her heart racing as the air crackled with tension. "You have the power to break free." With a final surge of energy, the family faced the darkness, their voices rising in a chorus of strength and unity. The shadows howled in fury, but the light grew brighter, enveloping them in its warm embrace. Emma felt the air shift, the balance of power tilting in favor of hope. Then, with one final burst of light, the shadows shattered, dissipating into nothingness. The room was filled with a radiant glow, and Emma felt the weight of centuries of pain lifting from her shoulders. The mirror shimmered, reflecting the family now bathed in light, their faces filled with gratitude and relief. "You've done it!" the mother exclaimed, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "You've freed us!" Emma felt a rush of warmth envelop her, a sense of peace washing over her. "But your story isn't over yet. You must remember this moment, hold on to it, and let it guide you forward." As the light enveloped the family, their forms began to dissolve into the air, their whispers transformed into a melody of gratitude. Thank you," echoed through the room, reverberating in Emma's heart. With a final pulse, the mirror returned to its original state, the dark reflections replaced by her own image, now illuminated by the warmth of the light that had consumed the darkness. Emma stepped back, breathing heavily as she took in her surroundings. The old house felt different now, lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. The air was filled with a sense of tranquility, and the oppressive weight of sorrow had been replaced by hope. But even as Emma turned to leave, she felt a lingering presence, a final whisper that sent chills down her spine. There are more stories to uncover. As Emma stepped away from the mirror, the warmth of the light still lingered around her, a soothing balm against the memory of the darkness that had enveloped the house for so long. The echoes of gratitude from the family reverberated in her mind, a reminder of the power of confronting one's demons. But despite the peace she felt, an undercurrent of unease tugged at her heart. The final whisper echoed persistently, hinting at more hidden truths waiting to be discovered. She left the room, her steps deliberate and careful, each creak of the floorboards beneath her a reminder of the history contained within the walls of the house. Emma made her way back to the living room, where the remnants of her recent encounter with the mirror still lingered in the air like a fading dream. The room, once suffused with shadows, now felt inviting, bathed in soft sunlight filtering through the dusty windows. Yet something in the air was different, a shift in energy, almost as if the house itself was awakening from a long slumber. Emma's curiosity was piqued once more. What other secrets lay hidden in this seemingly ordinary dwelling? Driven by an insatiable desire to uncover the truth, she decided to explore further, retracing her steps to the hallway where her journey had begun. As she walked down the hallway, she noticed something unusual. One of the doors, which she had previously passed without a second glance, was slightly ajar. A draft of cool air brushed against her skin, as if the door itself was inviting her to enter. Heart racing, she approached the door and pushed it open wider, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Emma hesitated for a moment, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. But the voice in her head, the one that had guided her through her ordeal, urged her onward. "You need to see what's down there," it whispered, a gentle nudge of encouragement. Taking a deep breath, she descended the stairs, her footsteps echoing softly in the quiet. At the bottom of the staircase, Emma found herself in a dimly lit cellar, its air thick with dust and the scent of damp earth. Shelves lined the walls, cluttered with forgotten objects, old books, dusty jars, and mysterious trinkets. But what caught her attention was a large, ornate trunk resting against the far wall, its surface etched with intricate designs that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Emma felt a pull toward the trunk, an overwhelming curiosity to uncover its contents. As she approached, she noticed a heavy padlock securing it shut. Her fingers brushed against the cool metal, and she felt a spark of recognition. This was the lock that held something precious, something that might reveal the final pieces of the family's tragic story. She scanned the room, searching for anything that might help her unlock the trunk. Amid the clutter, a rusted key glinted from beneath an old book. She hurried over, heart pounding as she retrieved it. The key felt heavy in her hand, filled with potential as she made her way back to the trunk. With a deep breath, she inserted the key into the lock and turned it. The padlock clicked open, and she lifted the lid with a creak, her heart racing with anticipation. Inside, she found an assortment of items, photographs, letters, and keepsakes, each one imbued with the weight of memories. The first thing that caught her eye was a faded photograph of the family, taken years ago. Their smiles were bright, a stark contrast to the sorrow she had witnessed. But as she examined the photograph more closely, she noticed something odd, a shadowy figure lurking in the background, partially obscured but undeniably present. Intrigued, Emma sifted through the letters that accompanied the photograph. They detailed a family's struggles, their hopes and dreams, but also hinted at a dark secret that had torn them apart. As she read, the pieces began to fall into place, painting a picture of betrayal that ran deeper than she had initially imagined. One letter, in particular, sent a shiver down her spine. It spoke of a family member who had gone missing, someone whose absence had created a void filled with grief and blame. The letter mentioned whispers in the night, strange occurrences that had escalated after the person vanished. The darkness she had sensed in the house was born from this unresolved tragedy, festering like an open wound. Emma's heart ached for the family as she pieced together their story. They had been haunted not only by their past, but by the lingering presence of the lost family member. The house was more than just a vessel for memories. It was a conduit for their unresolved grief. Determined to bring closure to the family, Emma carefully gathered the letters and photographs, cradling them like fragile treasures. She needed to confront the remnants of the past and give the family the peace they so desperately sought. As she ascended the stairs, the air felt different. A sense of urgency enveloped her, pushing her forward. She returned to the living room, where the sunlight streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. She placed the items on the coffee table and closed her eyes, reaching deep within herself for the connection she had felt with the family. "Help me understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I want to help you find peace." In that moment, the air around her thickened, and she felt a presence, warm and familiar, like a gentle embrace. It was the family, their spirits swirling around her, their eyes filled with gratitude and yearning. Emma opened her eyes and saw their forms begin to coalesce, a soft glow surrounding them. With a deep breath, she spoke to them, her voice steady. "I found your stories. I know about your loss, your pain. You don't have to carry this burden anymore. Let me help you remember and find closure." The family members nodded, their expressions shifting from sorrow to hope. They reached out to her, and Emma felt their energy pulsing through her, connecting them across time and space. Together, they stood before the trunk, the remnants of their past scattered on the table. Emma felt the weight of their memories, the struggles they had faced, and the love that had once united them. "Let's honor your lost member," she said softly. "Let's remember them and release the pain." As the words left her lips, the room shimmered, the energy around them intensifying. The shadows that had lingered in the corners began to recede, dissipating like fog in the sunlight. Emma felt a surge of warmth, a feeling of liberation washing over her as the family began to remember. Laughter erupted in the room, mingling with tears as they shared their fondest memories of the lost member. Stories of joy and love flowed freely, washing away the darkness that had suffocated their spirits for so long. Emma stood in awe, feeling the weight of their grief lift, replaced by a profound sense of peace. As the last echoes of laughter faded, the family turned to her, their forms glowing brighter than before. "Thank you," the mother whispered, her voice filled with warmth. "You've set us free." Emma felt tears prick at her eyes as she smiled, her heart swelling with joy. "You did this. You faced your past, and now you can move forward." With a final surge of energy, the family embraced one another, their forms shimmering like stars before they slowly faded from view. Emma stood alone in the room, the air filled with a serene stillness. The house felt transformed, its energy renewed, freed from the weight of sorrow that had clung to it for far too long. As she turned to leave, Emma felt a shift in the air, a soft breeze brushing against her cheek. She glanced back at the trunk, the letters and photographs now illuminated by a golden light, forever capturing the essence of the family's journey. With a deep breath, she stepped outside, the sun shining brightly overhead. The world felt different, alive with possibility, as if every shadow had been replaced by light. Emma knew that while she had uncovered the secrets of the house, the journey of healing was ongoing. There were countless stories waiting to be told, and she was ready to embrace them all. In that moment, she vowed to continue her journey, to seek out the stories hidden in the shadows and bring them into the light. The darkness would no longer have power over her or those she helped. The echoes of the past would serve as a reminder of resilience, love, and the healing that comes from facing one's truth. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. It was a day like any other when Emily decided to take a solitary walk through the old cemetery at the edge of town. Nestled between gnarled oaks and swaying willows, the cemetery had long been a place of solace for her. The serene beauty of the weathered headstones, blanketed in moss and ivy, drew her in like a moth to a flame. She often found comfort in the stories each grave whispered, tales of lives lived and lost, hopes fulfilled, and dreams unfulfilled. As the late afternoon sun cast a golden hue over the landscape, Emily wandered deeper into the cemetery, her thoughts drifting like the autumn leaves that danced around her feet. She had always felt a strange connection to this place, as if the spirits of the departed were welcoming her into their midst. But on this particular day, an unsettling feeling began to creep into her heart, a sense of foreboding that hung in the air like a thick fog. She brushed off the feeling, attributing it to her overactive imagination, and continued her exploration. The crunch of gravel beneath her feet and the rustling of leaves overhead created a tranquil symphony that usually soothed her mind. But today, the atmosphere felt heavy, as if the very earth held its breath, waiting for something to unfold. As she strolled through the rows of headstones, Emily noticed a new grave at the far end of the cemetery. It stood out among the others, freshly dug, the soil still loose and dark. A wrought iron cross marked the spot, its surface glistening as if recently polished. Curiosity piqued, Emily approached the grave, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel a strange pull toward the site, a magnetic force that urged her to come closer. As she neared the grave, a chill ran down her spine. The name etched on the cross sent a jolt of recognition through her: Emily Carter. She stumbled backward, her breath catching in her throat. No, this can't be happening," she whispered, her heart racing as she struggled to process the sight before her. The familiar name, a reflection of her own existence, seemed to mock her. She had always taken her life for granted, and now, in the quiet of the cemetery, the reality of her mortality struck her like a blow. As panic surged within her, she sank to her knees in front of the grave. The world around her blurred, and she fought against the tide of fear threatening to engulf her. How could this be? Was it a mistake? An eerie coincidence? The questions raced through her mind, but deep down, a sense of dread told her that it was much more than that. Clutching the cool earth beneath her, she examined the grave more closely. The headstone was unadorned, lacking any dates or epitaphs. It was as if the grave had been prepared for her, yet she was very much alive. Her pulse quickened as she felt a cold breeze sweep through the cemetery, rustling the leaves overhead. It was as if the spirits around her were aware of her presence, watching her with curiosity and concern. Emily struggled to her feet, her mind racing with possibilities. What if this grave was a warning, a message from the universe? Or was it simply a cruel trick of fate? She glanced around, hoping to find someone who could explain what was happening. But the cemetery remained eerily quiet. A soft rustle caught her attention, and she turned to see an old woman standing a few yards away, her frail frame wrapped in a shawl that fluttered like a whisper in the wind. The woman's eyes were piercing, filled with an ancient wisdom that seemed to reach into Emily's very soul. "Do you see it?" the woman asked, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it resonated with a haunting clarity. The truth that lies beneath the surface. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. "What do you mean?" she replied, trying to mask her fear. "This grave, it's mine. How can this be?" The old woman stepped closer, her presence both comforting and unsettling. "Graves often tell stories, child," she said, her voice smooth like velvet. "Some are warnings, and others are invitations to confront what lies within. You must understand the significance of what you see before you." Emily looked back at her grave, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "But I'm not dead. I don't want to be. I can't be." She felt a wave of despair wash over her, the ground beneath her feet feeling unstable. The old woman's gaze softened, and she placed a reassuring hand on Emily's shoulder. "Life and death are not always as they appear. Sometimes we must confront the shadow of our own existence to truly appreciate the light." As the words sank in, Emily felt a flicker of understanding igniting within her. She had been living her life in a haze, taking each day for granted, never stopping to reflect on her choices or the impact they had on herself and those around her. The grave was not just a warning. It was a mirror, reflecting the life she had led and the one she still had the chance to live. With newfound determination, Emily looked back at the grave, her heart swelling with resolve. "I won't let this define me. I refuse to be a ghost in my own life." The old woman smiled, a knowing glint in her eye. "Then rise, Emily Carter. Embrace your life and the stories yet to unfold." With those words echoing in her mind, Emily stepped back from the grave, her fear dissipating like mist in the morning sun. The old woman's presence lingered, a protective force guiding her as she turned to leave. As she walked away from the grave, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the cemetery. She felt a weight lift from her shoulders, as if the grave had released her from its grasp. No longer shackled by fear, she resolved to live with purpose and intention, cherishing each moment as a gift rather than a given. The cemetery faded behind her as she emerged into the world outside, the vibrant colors of life enveloping her like a warm embrace. Emily knew that while she had seen her own grave, it was not the end. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with the promise of self-discovery and the courage to embrace the unknown. The days following Emily's unsettling discovery in the cemetery were a whirlwind of emotion. The image of her own grave haunted her thoughts, stirring feelings of urgency and dread. She felt like a puppet on strings, her life dictated by forces beyond her understanding. Each time she glanced at her reflection in the mirror, it was as if a stranger stared back, a ghostly reminder of the person she had become. Determined not to let fear consume her, Emily decided to confront her anxieties head-on. She began journaling her thoughts and feelings, a therapeutic endeavor that allowed her to untangle the web of her emotions. The act of writing became a ritual, a way for her to reconnect with herself and chart a path toward reclaiming her life. Each word penned on the page felt like a small victory against the encroaching darkness. But as the days turned into weeks, Emily felt the weight of the grave's warning pressing down on her. It was as if the universe was conspiring to show her the truth of her existence. The shadows of her past loomed larger, and she knew she could no longer hide from them. One fateful evening, while she was tidying her apartment, she stumbled across an old box tucked away in the back of her closet. It had been a long time since she had opened it, and as she pried it open, memories flooded back. Inside the box lay a collection of photographs, mementos from a time when life had felt simpler. Among the pictures, she discovered a faded snapshot of her family gathered around a picnic table, laughter frozen in time. Their smiles were genuine, untainted by the troubles that would later surface. But beneath the surface of those memories, she felt a dark undercurrent stirring, a family secret she had long buried in her subconscious. Intrigued yet apprehensive, Emily began sorting through the contents of the box. Among the photographs, she found old letters addressed to her mother, written in elegant cursive. The letters spoke of family gatherings, but they also hinted at something more sinister. Whispers of betrayal, regret, and shadows lurking just out of sight. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily began to delve into her family's history. She spent hours at the library, poring over old newspapers and records, tracing the family tree that spiraled back generations. As she unearthed the fragments of her past, she felt a sense of foreboding creeping closer, like an unseen presence watching her every move. One particularly haunting evening, she stumbled upon an article about a tragic incident that had marred her family's name. It detailed the mysterious disappearance of a relative, a young woman who had vanished without a trace. The article described how the family had been torn apart by the tragedy, each member retreating into their own world of grief and shame. Emily's heart raced as she read the final lines. To this day, the fate of Clara Bennett remains unknown, shrouded in mystery and despair. A chill coursed through her veins as she realized that Clara's fate might be more connected to her own than she had ever imagined. With each new revelation, the pieces began to fall into place, but they only served to deepen her unease. That night, Emily was plagued by vivid dreams. Visions of Clara wandering through the hallways of their ancestral home, her eyes filled with sorrow and longing. Each time Emily tried to reach out, Clara would dissolve in a mist, leaving behind only an echo of her sorrowful cries. The dreams persisted for nights on end, each one drawing her closer to the truth she feared. In the quiet moments before sleep, Emily could almost hear Clara's voice, beckoning her to uncover the secrets hidden within their shared lineage. But what did Clara want from her? What dark truth was entwined with her own existence? Driven by an insatiable need for answers, Emily resolved to visit the ancestral home, the grand old mansion where her family had once gathered for festive celebrations. It had been years since she last set foot in that imposing structure, a relic of the past that loomed over her like a specter. Memories of her childhood flitted through her mind, both sweet and bitter, as she recalled the laughter and warmth, now overshadowed by the darkness of the secrets buried within its walls. As she approached the mansion, a sense of foreboding enveloped her. The once vibrant facade was faded and peeling, a ghost of its former glory. The garden lay overgrown, wild with weeds and brambles that twisted and turned like fingers reaching out to grasp at the air. The imposing front door creaked open with a mournful groan, as if warning her to turn back. Inside, The air was thick with dust and silence, a stark contrast to the vibrant memories she had of this place. As she wandered through the echoing halls, shadows danced along the walls, whispering secrets she could almost understand. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if she were treading on sacred ground, a graveyard of family history. Her heart raced as she climbed the staircase to the upper floor, each creak of the wooden steps reverberating like a heartbeat in her ears. The rooms felt alive, as if they were waiting for her, and with each door she opened, Emily felt the weight of expectation pressing upon her. Finally, she arrived at her grandmother's old study, a room filled with memories and remnants of the past. The air was heavy with the scent of old books and faded paper. The walls were lined with dusty shelves, and the dim light flickered from an antique lamp that cast elongated shadows across the floor. On the desk lay a stack of old journals, their pages yellowed with age. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she recognized her grandmother's elegant handwriting. She felt a compulsion to read the words, to sift through the layers of history that had been buried for far too long. As she opened the first journal, the words seemed to leap off the page. Her grandmother's entries spoke of family gatherings, of joy, but also of fear. Fear of losing loved ones, fear of the shadows that lingered just beyond their reach. Emily felt a connection to her grandmother as she read about her struggles, the weight of expectations pressing down on her. And then, in a shaky scrawl, Emily discovered the truth. Clara had not simply vanished. She had been taken. The last entry revealed a harrowing tale of jealousy and betrayal, detailing a clandestine affair that had threatened to tear the family apart. Clara's desperate attempts to escape the confines of her life had led her down a dark path, one that ultimately consumed her. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she pieced together the fragments of her family's dark history. The truth was more horrifying than she could have imagined, a cycle of secrets and tragedies that had shaped her lineage. But with that revelation came a newfound resolve. She would not allow Clara's pain to be in vain. She would break the cycle and confront the darkness that loomed over her family. The sun dipped below the horizon as Emily closed the journal, the last rays of light illuminating the room with a warm glow. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity wash over her. It was time to face the truth and confront the shadows of her family's past, to honor Clara's memory by bringing light to the darkness that had consumed them for far too long. The revelation of Clara's tragic fate was a heavy burden for Emily, but it also ignited a fierce determination within her. No longer would she allow fear to dictate her actions. The darkness that had enveloped her family for generations would end with her. Armed with the knowledge of her grandmother's journal, Emily set out to confront the ghosts that lingered in the shadows of her family's history. As the days passed, Emily felt a sense of urgency. She knew she needed to investigate further, to uncover the truth behind the betrayal that had shattered Clara's life. The whispers of the past seemed to beckon her, urging her to dig deeper into the mysteries surrounding her family. One evening, while poring over old family records and documents in the dusty library, Emily stumbled upon a name that sent chills down her spine. Jonathan Hawthorne, a family friend who had been a frequent visitor to the mansion during Clara's time. The articles painted him as charming and charismatic, yet there was a sense of darkness that hung around his reputation, a hint of danger beneath the surface. Determined to learn more, Emily began searching for any records or articles that might reveal more about Jonathan. Her investigation led her to discover that he had left town shortly after Clara's disappearance, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. The more she uncovered, the more convinced she became that Jonathan held the key to understanding what had truly happened. With her heart pounding, Emily decided to visit the town archives the next day. The musty scent of aged paper filled her lungs as she sifted through boxes of documents, old photographs, and newspapers. After hours of searching, she finally found a photograph of Jonathan. He stood confidently with a group of friends, a charming smile on his face, but his eyes held a glimmer of something unsettling. As she examined the photo closely, Emily felt a pang of recognition. There was a familiarity in his features, a striking resemblance to a man she had seen in her dreams. The connection made her stomach churn, a chilling realization that Jonathan was woven into the fabric of her family's dark history. Determined to confront him, Emily began to gather information about his whereabouts. After asking around town, she learned that Jonathan had moved to a neighboring city, and the news was not far-fetched. He still held a certain influence in the community, but his life remained shrouded in mystery. With newfound resolve, Emily decided to pay him a visit. Armed with questions and a heart full of determination, she drove to the city, her mind racing with thoughts of confrontation and clarity. The drive felt surreal, as if she were traveling through a tunnel of memories and shadows, each mile bringing her closer to the truth. As she arrived at Jonathan's residence, a modest but well-kept house, her heart raced with anticipation. She knocked on the door, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. A moment later, the door creaked open to reveal Jonathan, older but still exuding an aura of charisma. "Can I help you?" he asked, a hint of surprise flickering in his eyes. "Mr. Hawthorne," Emily began, forcing herself to maintain eye contact despite the unease bubbling within her. "I need to talk to you about Clara Bennett." His expression shifted subtly, and for a brief moment, Emily caught a glimpse of the man he once was, a facade crumbling under the weight of her words. "Clara? That was a long time ago. What could you possibly want to know?" The tension in the air crackled as Emily stepped forward. "I know what happened to her. I found the journal, and I need to hear your side of the story." Jonathan's demeanor shifted from surprise to guarded. He invited her in, and as they settled into the living room, Emily felt the atmosphere grow heavy with unspoken truths. The walls felt alive, as if they were closing in on her, harboring the weight of history. "Clara was a beautiful soul," he began, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "But she was restless, searching for something more than the life we had in that town. I cared for her deeply, but things got complicated." Emily leaned in, her heart racing. "What do you mean by complicated? Did you have something to do with her disappearance?" His gaze fell to the floor, as if the weight of guilt pressed down on him. "It wasn't my intention. We were close, but Clara wanted to leave. She had dreams of escaping, of starting anew, and I couldn't be the anchor she needed. We had a fight the night she disappeared." "What happened that night?" Emily pressed, desperation flooding her voice. "We were at the old cemetery. She was furious, claiming I was holding her back. I tried to reason with her, but she stormed off into the darkness, and I lost sight of her. I swear I never meant for anything to happen." Emily felt her heart sink. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, yet the picture remained blurred. "Did you ever search for her? Did you report it?" Jonathan's shoulders slumped, the weight of regret hanging heavy in the air. "I didn't know how. My family had a reputation to uphold, and the thought of it getting out terrified me. So I left town, hoping the memory would fade. I thought I could escape it. I had no idea her family would be haunted by this forever." With each word, Emily felt the tension between them dissolve, revealing a shared pain that resonated deeply. "But Clara's ghost is still here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Her story deserves to be told." In that moment, a connection formed, a bond forged from shared grief and guilt. Jonathan's eyes glistened with unshed tears as he nodded, acknowledging the weight of their shared past. "Maybe together we can finally give her the justice she deserves," Emily suggested, her heart racing with newfound purpose. The room fell silent as they sat together, the shadows around them shifting as if acknowledging their pact. They would dig deeper into the mystery that had haunted both their families for so long. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the window, Emily felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. Perhaps, in confronting the shadows of their past, they could finally free Clara's spirit and find peace in their own lives. Emily and Jonathan worked tirelessly in the following days, piecing together the fragments of Clara's life and the events that had led to her tragic fate. They delved into local records, seeking out forgotten archives and eyewitness accounts, determined to bring the truth to light. Each revelation added depth to the haunting mystery that had long enveloped their families, urging them to confront not only Clara's story, but also their own buried fears. As they investigated, they uncovered chilling accounts from townspeople who had witnessed strange occurrences around the Bennett mansion in the years following Clara's disappearance. Some spoke of ghostly apparitions wandering the estate, while others claimed to have heard sorrowful cries echoing through the halls at night. Emily listened intently, each tale feeding her growing sense of urgency. She couldn't shake the feeling that Clara's spirit was restless, still seeking closure after all these years. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows danced around the library, Jonathan leaned back in his chair, exhaustion etched on his face. "I never realized how much pain was caused by that night. I thought leaving would erase it all, but now it feels like it's consuming me. Running from the past only gives it power," Emily replied softly, her heart heavy with empathy. "We owe it to Clara and to ourselves to confront it. We need to go back to the mansion." Jonathan's eyes widened, a mix of fear and determination crossing his features. "Are you sure? The memories there, they're not just painful, they're terrifying." Emily nodded, feeling the pull of the mansion's history like a magnet. "It's the only way to understand what happened. We have to face whatever shadows linger there." That night, as they prepared for their journey back to the Bennett mansion, Emily's dreams were haunted by images of Clara. Her laughter, her anguish, the way she danced through the halls before everything changed. Waking in a cold sweat, Emily resolved to uncover the truth and free Clara's spirit from the shackles of the past. The following morning, they drove to the mansion, its imposing silhouette looming against the pale sky. As they approached, Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. The once vibrant home now felt like a hollow shell, the weight of its history pressing heavily on her heart. "Are you ready?" Jonathan asked, his voice trembling slightly. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "We have to do this. For Clara." Together, they stepped inside, the creaking floorboards echoing their arrival. The air was thick with dust, memories suspended in time. Each room felt like a chapter of a story, a place where joy had turned to sorrow. They began their search in Clara's old bedroom, which remained untouched since her disappearance. Emily's heart ached at the sight of the delicate floral wallpaper and the vanity still adorned with remnants of a life cut short. She ran her fingers over the dusty surface, trying to connect with the girl who once dreamed of escaping this place. "Clara spent a lot of time in here," Jonathan said, his voice barely above a whisper. "She would write in her journal for hours." As if on cue, Emily spotted the corner of a notebook peeking out from under the bed. Heart racing, she pulled it free, her breath hitching as she recognized Clara's handwriting. "It's her journal." They sat cross-legged on the floor, the weight of Clara's words filling the room as they read through her final entries. Clara wrote about her dreams, her frustrations, and the secrets she felt compelled to keep. With each page, Emily felt closer to Clara, as if they were sharing an unspoken bond. One entry sent chills down her spine. "I can feel the walls closing in on me. Sometimes I think I hear whispers, voices calling my name. I wish I could escape, but I fear what lies beyond this house. Is it possible to be trapped even when you're free?" "What did she mean?" Jonathan murmured, the unease creeping back into his voice. Emily considered the weight of Clara's words. Maybe she felt confined by more than just the house. Perhaps there were forces at play that we don't yet understand. Just then, a loud thud echoed through the hallway, making them both jump. They exchanged nervous glances, adrenaline coursing through their veins. "What was that?" Jonathan whispered, his eyes wide with fear. "Let's check it out," Emily said, her voice steadier than she felt. They crept down the dimly lit hallway, each step echoing ominously around them. As they approached the source of the noise, Emily felt a strange pull, as if the house itself was guiding her to uncover its darkest secrets. Turning the corner, they found themselves in a forgotten part of the mansion, a door that had long been shut. Dust hung in the air, and the handle was cold to the touch as Emily grasped it, her heart pounding in her chest. With a gentle push, the door creaked open, revealing a small, musty room filled with old furniture covered in white sheets. But it was the wall that caught Emily's attention, a patch of darkness that seemed to pulsate with energy. "What is this place?" Jonathan asked, his voice tinged with fear. "I don't know," Emily replied, her curiosity piqued. "But it feels significant." As she stepped inside, she felt a rush of cold air envelop her, sending chills down her spine. The room felt alive, the atmosphere thick with tension. She approached the wall, her fingers brushing against the cool surface. Suddenly, the shadows flickered, revealing an inscription barely visible beneath the layers of dust. Emily leaned in closer, her breath catching in her throat as she read the words. "Those who betray will forever haunt the souls of the innocent." The weight of the message settled heavily on her chest, and she felt Jonathan's presence behind her, his breath hitching in response. "What does it mean?" he asked, a tremor of fear evident in his voice. "It means Clara wasn't just a victim of circumstance," Emily replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "She was betrayed by someone she trusted." As they stood in the room, enveloped in darkness, the air grew thick with tension, and the shadows seemed to whisper Clara's name. "Emily!" Jonathan's voice broke through the silence. "Look!" He pointed toward the corner of the room, where a small trunk sat, its lock rusty and worn. "What if there's something inside?" Emily felt a surge of adrenaline as they approached the trunk, the mystery of the house drawing them in like moths to a flame. Together, they worked to open it, and as the lid creaked open, they were met with a trove of forgotten memories. Old photographs, letters, and a delicate locket that shimmered in the dim light. But it was the final letter that caught Emily's eye. Its edges frayed and the ink faded. As she read the words, a cold realization washed over her. The letter was from Clara to Jonathan, revealing the depth of her feelings, her dreams of leaving the mansion, and her deep-seated fears of what lay beyond. Jonathan's face blanched as he read over her shoulder. "I had no idea," his voice trembled, regret etched across his features. "I never knew how much she suffered." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she grasped the gravity of Clara's love and the betrayal that had left her trapped. In that moment, they understood the true depth of their mission: to free Clara's spirit and break the cycle of pain that had haunted their families for far too long. "Together, we can make this right," Emily said, her voice filled with newfound determination. "We'll give Clara a voice, and we'll make sure her story is told." With the weight of the past heavy on their hearts, Emily and Jonathan set out to uncover the truth, driven by the knowledge that Clara's spirit could finally find peace. As they left the hidden room, they felt the shadows shift, as if the house was finally beginning to release its hold. Determined to free Clara's spirit, Emily and Jonathan set out to uncover the hidden truths that lay within the walls of the Bennett mansion. They could feel a palpable tension in the air as they navigated through the dust-laden corridors, the weight of Clara's sorrow hanging over them like a dark cloud. Each creak of the floorboards beneath their feet served as a reminder of the secrets buried deep within the mansion's history, secrets that were desperate to be revealed. Back in the main hall, Emily spread the photographs and letters across a table, creating a timeline of Clara's life and the connections that had led to her tragic fate. Jonathan paced the room, deep in thought, occasionally glancing at the array of memories laid out before them. "What if we're not just uncovering Clara's story?" he said, running a hand through his hair. "What if we're also exposing something far darker? What if whoever betrayed her is still here?" The notion sent a chill down Emily's spine. "You think they could still be watching us, waiting for us to uncover the truth?" Jonathan nodded, his expression grim. "We have to be careful. This house has a way of holding on to its past, and those who were involved in Clara's life may not want us to expose what happened." As if sensing the tension in the air, the mansion seemed to respond. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, sending a shiver through the room. Emily felt an overwhelming urge to press forward. "We can't stop now. Clara deserves to be heard." The photographs showed Clara in happier times, smiling, laughing, surrounded by friends. But beneath those joyful expressions, Emily could see the hints of sadness in Clara's eyes. It was as if she had known even then that her happiness was fragile, tethered to a secret that could shatter everything. With a sense of purpose, Emily decided it was time to confront the heart of the mystery. We need to find out more about the people in her life. Who were her friends? Who could have betrayed her? They decided to start with Clara's childhood friend, a woman named Lila, who had moved away shortly after Clara's disappearance. Lila had once been Clara's confidant, and Emily felt that finding her could provide crucial insights into Clara's life. After a few phone calls and digging through Old Town directories, They managed to track Lila down to a small house on the outskirts of town. As they approached her doorstep, a knot of anxiety tightened in Emily's stomach. Was she ready to hear what Lila might reveal? The door creaked open, revealing a woman in her late 30s with tired eyes and an air of caution. "Can I help you?" Lila asked, suspicion lacing her voice. "Lila." Emily stepped forward, her heart racing. "I'm Emily, and this is Jonathan. We're researching Clara Bennett's story." At the mention of Clara's name, Lila's expression shifted, a mixture of shock and sadness washing over her features. "Clara, I thought about her often. I didn't know anyone was looking into what happened. Please, we need to understand what happened that night," Emily implored, her voice trembling with urgency. "Anything you can tell us would help." Lila hesitated, glancing back into her home as if weighing the consequences of opening up. "Come in," she finally said, stepping aside to allow them in. Inside, the small living room was filled with family photographs and a sense of warmth that contrasted sharply with the coldness of the Bennett mansion. They settled on the worn couch, and Lila took a deep breath. "Clara and I were close," she began, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "But we lost touch after she started hanging out with some new friends. They were different, not like the kids we grew up with." "What do you mean?" Jonathan asked, leaning forward. "Were they trouble?" "They seemed to draw her in with their excitement and glamour," Lila replied. "But there was something darker lurking beneath the surface. I remember one night, she came to me in tears. She said she was scared but didn't want to leave them. I begged her to come home with me, but she refused." Emily's heart ached for Clara, realizing how trapped she must have felt. "What happened after that?" Lila hesitated again, her eyes downcast. "I heard rumors after she disappeared. They said she was involved in something dangerous, something that put her life at risk. I tried to reach out, but no one would talk to me. I felt helpless." As Lila spoke, Emily could see the weight of guilt etched across her features. "You weren't responsible for what happened, Lila. Clara made her own choices," Emily reassured her gently. "But I could have done something. I should have fought harder to keep her safe," Lila whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I didn't realize how serious things had become until it was too late." With newfound determination, Emily pressed on. "Do you remember the names of any of those friends? Anyone who might have been involved?" Lila shook her head, frustration evident in her voice. "I only knew one Mark. He was charming, but had a temper. Clara was infatuated with him, but I could see that he was trouble." "Mark," Jonathan muttered, scribbling the name in his notebook. "We need to find him. He might know more about what happened that night." Lila nodded, her expression grave. "Be careful. If he's the same person I remember, he won't take kindly to questions about Clara." Emily and Jonathan left Lila's house with a mix of hope and trepidation. They had a name, a lead that could potentially unravel the entire mystery. But the thought of confronting someone tied to Clara's fate filled them with dread. As they drove back to the mansion, the weight of their discoveries pressed heavily on their shoulders. "What if he refuses to talk?" Jonathan said, breaking the silence. "Then we'll have to find another way," Emily replied firmly. "We owe it to Clara to keep searching." Later that evening, under the flickering light of candles in the main hall, they pored over everything they had gathered so far. Lila's insights, the photographs, the journal entries. Everything felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved. With a deep breath, Emily suggested, "Let's try to connect the dots. If Mark was the one who influenced Clara's life, maybe there are others who can shed light on their relationship." The following days turned into a whirlwind of research and interviews. They reached out to other acquaintances from Clara's past, trying to piece together her life before the night that changed everything. Emily felt a growing sense of urgency, knowing they were running out of time to bring Clara's truth to light. Finally, after days of chasing leads, they managed to locate Mark, who now lived in a small town not far from the mansion. Nervously, they prepared for the confrontation, knowing it could lead to either answers or danger. Arriving at his house, a shroud of uncertainty enveloped them. They exchanged glances, each feeling the weight of what lay ahead. With a firm resolve, they knocked on the door. After what felt like an eternity, Mark answered, his face a mix of surprise and guarded curiosity. "Can I help you?" "Mark, we need to talk about Clara," Emily said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. He froze, a flicker of recognition passing over his features. "What do you want?" "We want to know what happened the night she disappeared," Jonathan added, trying to maintain an even tone. Mark's expression hardened, and for a moment, it felt as if the air had thickened around them. "I don't have anything to say about that." Emily stepped closer, refusing to back down. "You were close to her. She was scared, and you knew it. What did you do?" Mark's eyes flashed with anger, but Emily stood her ground, drawing strength from Clara's memory. "You have to tell us. We deserve to know the truth." A tense silence hung in the air before Mark finally spoke, his voice low and edged with bitterness. "Clara made her own choices. She wanted to be part of our world. You think I forced her into anything? She was drawn to it." "Drawn to what? The lies? The danger?" Jonathan interjected, his frustration evident. "You didn't protect her." Mark's facade cracked for a moment, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. "You think I could have stopped her? She was passionate. She believed in us, in what we were doing." "What were you doing?" Emily pressed, desperation creeping into her voice. "What led to that night?" Mark clenched his jaw, grappling with his emotions. "We were involved in something that spiraled out of control. Clara wanted to be part of it, but I never wanted her to get hurt. That night, I tried to get her to leave with me, but she wouldn't. She was too far gone." "What happened?" Emily's voice softened, realizing the pain etched on Mark's face. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice breaking. "Things got chaotic. There were arguments, and then she was gone. I thought I'd lost her forever." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, and Emily could see the regret etched on his face. Clara's story had become a web of choices, driven by desperation and desire, but the truth was still out of reach. Where did she go? Who else was there? Jonathan pressed, determined to unearth the hidden truth. Mark shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. "I don't know. I couldn't save her. I should have fought harder. I failed her." The anguish in his voice resonated deeply within Emily. Clara had been surrounded by people who claimed to care for her, yet in the end, it was betrayal that led to her demise. "Help us find her," Emily urged, her voice trembling with emotion. "We need to bring her home." Mark looked away, lost in his guilt. "I can't. It's too late." With a heavy heart, Emily stepped back, realizing the truth they had sought remained elusive. But she wouldn't give up. Clara deserved justice, and they were determined to find it. As they left Mark's house, a sense of frustration filled the air. Emily turned to Jonathan, her eyes filled with resolve. "We can't stop. There's more to uncover, and we owe it to Clara to keep digging." In the days that followed, Emily and Jonathan pushed deeper into Clara's past. They connected with more of her acquaintances, piecing together fragments of her story that revealed the harsh realities of her life. Each conversation brought them closer to understanding the intricate web of betrayal that had ensnared Clara, but they still felt the weight of the unanswered questions. One evening, while poring over Clara's journal again, Emily stumbled upon a cryptic entry that sent a chill down her spine. It mentioned a hidden location, a place that Clara had been drawn to, a place where secrets were buried. "Jonathan, look at this," Emily exclaimed, showing him the entry. "It says something about a hidden garden behind the mansion. Do you think it could lead us to the answers we're looking for?" Jonathan's eyes lit up with curiosity. "It's worth checking out. Maybe Clara left something behind." With renewed determination, they set off to the Bennett mansion once again. As they approached the overgrown gardens, a sense of anticipation tingled in the air. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grounds. "Do you think Clara found peace here?" Emily wondered aloud as they ventured deeper into the tangled greenery. "I hope so," Jonathan replied, glancing around. "But we need to focus. Let's find that hidden garden." After searching for what felt like hours, they finally stumbled upon a weathered gate, hidden beneath layers of vines and foliage. With a deep breath, Emily pushed it open, revealing a small, secluded garden. It was overgrown and wild, but there was a haunting beauty in the chaos. In the center stood a dilapidated stone fountain, its once vibrant colors faded by time. Emily felt a strange pull towards it, a sense that something important lay hidden in this forgotten sanctuary. As they approached the fountain, Jonathan noticed something glimmering among the debris. "Look," he pointed, and they both knelt down to investigate. It was an old locket, tarnished but still intact. With trembling fingers, Emily picked it up, feeling an electric jolt of energy coursing through her as she opened it. Inside was a photograph of Clara and a note that read, "I'll always find my way back to you." Tears filled Emily's eyes as she clutched the locket close to her heart. She was trying to hold on to something, she murmured. This was her way of keeping hope alive. Jonathan's expression softened, realizing the significance of their find. "This is a piece of her story. We need to show this to Lila. Maybe it will lead us closer to uncovering the truth about what really happened." With the locket in hand, they made their way back to Lila, eager to share their discovery. As they recounted their findings, Lila's eyes widened with recognition. "This is Clara's locket. I remember her wearing it," Lila exclaimed, her voice filled with emotion. "She must have cherished it deeply. It symbolizes her hope, her desire to be free from the darkness that surrounded her." With a renewed sense of purpose, Emily and Jonathan pressed Lila for more information. "Do you think Clara had any hidden places? Anywhere she would go to escape?" Lila nodded slowly, her brow furrowed in thought. "There was a cave on the outskirts of town that Clara loved. She used to go there to think, to escape the pressures of her life. Maybe she left something behind. Can you show us?" Jonathan asked eagerly. As they drove to the cave, the sun began to set, casting eerie shadows across the landscape. Emily felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as they approached the entrance. The cave loomed before them, dark and foreboding, yet something pulled her inside. Once inside, they flickered their flashlights across the rocky walls, searching for signs of Clara. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and every sound echoed through the cavern. It felt as if Clara's spirit lingered in the shadows, urging them to uncover the truth. After what felt like an eternity of searching, Emily noticed a small alcove tucked away in a corner. "Over here," she called to Jonathan and Lila. They hurried over, and Emily crouched down, brushing away dirt and debris. To her amazement, she uncovered a small wooden box, intricately carved with delicate designs. With trembling hands, she opened it, revealing a collection of letters and photographs. Tears streamed down Emily's face as she sifted through the letters, realizing they were notes between Clara and Lila. They detailed Clara's struggles, her dreams, and her fears. It was a window into her heart, a glimpse into the life she had tried to escape. "This is everything," Lila whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Clara poured her soul into these letters. As they read through the heartfelt words, the pieces of Clara's story began to come together. They learned about her feelings of isolation, her desire for connection, and the desperate choices she had made in pursuit of love and acceptance. But then they stumbled upon a letter that shook them to their core. Clara had written about a plan, a final confrontation with Mark. "I have to confront him. He can't keep me trapped in this nightmare. I will find a way to break free." This was the last letter she wrote, Emily said, her heart pounding. She was determined to escape him. Lila's face turned pale. "What happened that night? Did she confront him? Did he?" "We have to find out," Jonathan said, his voice steady. "We can't let her story end here." As they exited the cave, the weight of Clara's legacy hung heavy in the air. They knew they had to confront Mark again, armed with the knowledge of Clara's struggles and the courage of her spirit. With each step they took, they felt Clara's presence guiding them forward. They were no longer just searching for answers. They were fighting for her memory, for the truth that had eluded her for far too long. As they approached Mark's house once more, determination coursed through their veins. Emily knocked on the door, her heart racing as they prepared for the confrontation that could finally reveal the dark secrets that had haunted Clara for so long. The door creaked open, revealing Mark's weary expression. "What do you want now?" he snapped, his voice tinged with frustration. "Clara's story isn't over," Emily said, her voice steady despite the anxiety bubbling beneath the surface. "We know what she was trying to escape, and we need to talk about it." Mark's face hardened, but Emily pressed on, her resolve unwavering. Clara wrote letters that reveal the truth about her struggles and her desire to break free from the life you led her into. She was terrified. Mark's expression flickered, a mix of anger and guilt crossing his features. She made her own choices. You can't put that on me. No, she didn't have a choice. Emily's voice rose, fueled by her frustration. You were supposed to protect her, and you didn't. You let her down. As Jonathan stepped forward, he added, We found evidence of her plans to confront you. She wanted to take control of her life, but she didn't get the chance. What happened that night? Mark's face paled as the weight of their words sank in. I didn't mean for it to happen. I loved her, but things spiraled out of control. We were caught in a web of lies. Stop making excuses, Lila interjected, her voice breaking with emotion. You had a choice, and you failed her. The air was thick with tension as Mark's defenses crumbled. I didn't want to hurt her. I was caught up in my own struggles. Clara didn't deserve what happened, and I couldn't save her. Emily could see the pain in his eyes, the burden of guilt he carried. Tell us what happened, she demanded. We need to know the truth. After a long pause, Mark finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. We had an argument that night. I didn't want her to leave. I tried to stop her, but she was determined to confront me. It got out of hand, and then she was gone. What do you mean gone? Jonathan pressed, his expression fierce. What did you do? Mark looked away, shame etched across his face. I thought she left. I didn't realize until it was too late. I thought she was safe. Safe? Emily's voice trembled with anger. You should have protected her. You should have fought for her. I know, Mark cried, his frustration boiling over. But I was caught in my own mess. I didn't think she'd actually leave me. I thought we could work it out. You failed her, Lila said, her voice thick with bitterness. You failed us all. As the confrontation reached its climax, the truth hung heavy in the air. Emily could feel Clara's presence surrounding them, urging them to seek justice for her memory. They'd come too far to turn back now. We're not done yet, Emily declared, her eyes fixed on Mark. You need to take responsibility for your actions, and we will ensure that everyone knows the truth about Clara. With that, they left Mark's house, knowing the battle was far from over. They would continue to fight for Clara's memory, for the truth that had been buried under layers of deception. In the days that followed, they connected with legal authorities, armed with the letters and evidence they had uncovered. Clara's story was no longer just a whisper in the dark. It was a rallying cry for justice. As the investigation into Clara's death gained momentum, Emily and Jonathan felt a sense of purpose enveloping them. They were determined to honor Clara's legacy and ensure her story was told. Months passed, and the case finally reached a turning point. Mark was charged with manslaughter, the weight of Clara's pain finally brought to light. As Emily and Jonathan stood in the courtroom, they felt the presence of Clara surrounding them, guiding them through the tumultuous journey. During the trial, they presented the letters, revealing the depth of Clara's struggles and the truth of her last moments. With each word read aloud, the courtroom resonated with the pain and betrayal Clara had faced, and a wave of empathy swept through the audience. As the verdict was delivered, Emily felt a mixture of relief and sorrow wash over her. Mark was found guilty, but the victory was bittersweet. Clara would never return, and their battle had come at a cost. After the trial, Emily and Jonathan stood outside the courthouse, the sun setting behind them, casting long shadows on the ground. We did it, Emily, Jonathan said, his voice filled with a mixture of triumph and sadness. We fought for her. Emily nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. But it doesn't bring her back. We'll carry her memory with us, though. She deserves to be remembered. As they walked away, the weight of the journey they had embarked upon lingered in the air. They knew their fight was far from over. Clara's story would live on through them, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of darkness. In the days that followed, Emily and Jonathan turned their focus to advocacy, determined to help others who had faced similar struggles. They shared Clara's story through public speaking and outreach programs, aiming to shed light on the importance of mental health and the power of connection. Together, they forged a path forward, ensuring that Clara's legacy would not be forgotten. With each story they shared, they felt her presence guiding them, urging them to continue fighting for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Their journey, born from tragedy, transformed into a beacon of hope, reminding others that even in the darkest moments, there is always a flicker of light waiting to be ignited. Clara's story became their own, a testament to love, loss, and the unyielding spirit of those who refuse to be silenced. As Emily and Jonathan stood together, hand in hand, they knew they had found their purpose: to honor Clara's memory and to be the voice for the voiceless, ensuring that no one would ever feel alone in their struggle again. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents. It was an ordinary Thursday evening when Mia stepped out of her office building, the sun dipping below the horizon, casting a warm orange hue across the bustling city streets. The usual cacophony of traffic and pedestrians surrounded her as she made her way to the subway station. Little did she know, the events of that night would alter the course of her life forever. As she navigated through the crowded sidewalk, she noticed a figure lingering at the edge of her vision. A tall man, dressed in a dark hoodie, seemed to be pacing in rhythm with her steps. Mia quickened her pace, attributing her discomfort to the late hour and the fatigue of a long workday. But the stranger mirrored her movements, a chill crawling down her spine as realization dawned. Ignoring the nagging sensation, she continued towards the subway entrance. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting an eerie glow on the tiles beneath her feet. Each step echoed in the emptiness, amplifying her growing anxiety. Mia's heart raced as she glanced back. The stranger had followed her into the station, his presence looming larger in the confined space. "Just keep walking," she muttered to herself, the anxiety transforming into a palpable fear. She descended the stairs, the sound of her footsteps drowned out by the distant rumble of an approaching train. Her mind raced with possibilities. Why was he following her? Did he mean her harm? As she reached the platform, she took a moment to breathe, trying to calm her racing heart. She decided to take a seat on one of the benches, strategically positioning herself in a way that allowed her to keep an eye on the man. He was now standing at the far end of the platform, casually leaning against a pillar, seemingly waiting for the same train. The air felt thick with tension as Mia's train arrived, the screeching brakes echoing like a warning. She boarded, quickly finding a spot near the door, hoping the crowd would offer her some semblance of safety. She stole glances at the stranger, who now stood outside the train, his eyes fixed on her. As the doors closed, Mia felt a mix of relief and unease. The train lurched forward, pulling her away from the platform. She thought she had escaped, but the creeping sensation of being watched refused to leave her. Mia's apartment was just a few blocks from the subway station, a cozy space filled with the comforts of home. Yet, as she stepped inside, the familiar surroundings felt foreign. She locked the door behind her, the sound echoing in the stillness, and took a moment to gather her thoughts. Just a coincidence, she reassured herself, though doubt lingered in the back of her mind. She poured herself a glass of water, trying to shake off the unease. Perhaps the man was simply another commuter, and her imagination was running wild. But every creak of the floorboards, every shadow that danced in the corners of her vision, heightened her anxiety. Later that night, as Mia settled on her couch with a book, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The soft glow of the lamp illuminated the room, yet the shadows felt darker, more ominous. She turned on the television, letting the noise drown out her thoughts, but the sense of impending dread refused to dissipate. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed through the apartment, making her jump. Heart pounding, she set the book aside and approached the door cautiously. "Who is it?" she called, trying to sound braver than she felt. Silence followed. She peered through the peephole, her breath hitching when she saw a figure lurking in the dim light. It was the stranger from the subway. Panic surged through her veins. She backed away from the door, her mind racing. Why was he here? Did he know where she lived? The knocks grew more insistent, reverberating in her chest. "Mia," he called, his voice low and smooth, sending chills down her spine. "I just want to talk." She hesitated, contemplating her next move. Calling the police felt drastic, but she didn't know who he was or what he wanted. "Go away," she shouted, trying to sound firm. "Please, just let me explain," he replied, his tone now more pleading than threatening. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with tension. Mia felt her heartbeat quicken as she stepped back toward the door, her hand instinctively reaching for her phone, ready to dial for help if necessary. "Listen," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to scare you. I promise I'm not here to hurt you. I just need to talk to you. There's something you need to know." Her mind raced. What could possibly be so important? Why had he followed her? Anxiety clawed at her, and she considered whether it was wise to respond or just ignore him altogether. "Please," he urged, his voice desperate now. "I promise I'll explain everything if you just give me a chance." Despite every warning bell ringing in her head, curiosity flickered within her. She took a deep breath, her heart still pounding as she cautiously opened the door a crack, just enough to see him clearly. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What do you want?" His eyes, dark and intense, held a mixture of fear and urgency. "My name is Jason. I know this sounds insane, but you're in danger. I can help you." Mia felt a shiver run down her spine. The mixture of fear and intrigue battled within her. She weighed her options. Her instinct screamed at her to shut the door, but something about the desperation in his voice made her pause. "Why should I trust you?" she replied, still keeping the door firmly closed. "Because I've been watching you for weeks," he confessed, his expression earnest. "Not in a creepy way, I swear. I know something about the man who followed you tonight." Mia's heart raced at his admission. The man from the subway was more than just an unsettling stranger. There was a connection, something deeper than she had anticipated. "Tell me everything," she demanded, needing to understand what was happening. "Not here," Jason replied, glancing nervously over his shoulder as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. "Let me come in. I'll explain everything, I promise." She hesitated, torn between fear and a desperate need for answers. The evening had been strange enough. A part of her was eager to learn the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. "Okay," she finally said, slowly opening the door wider. "But if you try anything—" "I won't," he interrupted, stepping inside quickly but carefully. "I swear, Mia, you need to listen to me." As she closed the door behind him, an uneasy feeling settled in her stomach. The night was far from over, and the secrets waiting to unfold were more sinister than she could have ever imagined. As Mia and Jason stood in the dimly lit living room, the atmosphere felt charged with tension. She studied him closely, trying to gauge his intentions. His appearance, a disheveled man in a hoodie with shadowed eyes, gave her pause, but the urgency in his demeanor suggested that he genuinely meant no harm. "Start talking," she urged, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. She motioned for him to sit on the couch, while she remained standing, a physical barrier that helped her feel a bit more in control. Jason sank into the cushions, visibly relieved to have a moment to breathe. "Thank you for letting me in. I know it's strange, but I've been following you because I thought you might be in danger. The man you saw tonight, he's not just some random stranger." "What do you mean?" Mia asked, crossing her arms defensively. "Who is he?" "I can't say too much," Jason began, running a hand through his tousled hair. "But he's been watching you for a while. He's not like us. He has a history, a dark one." Mia's mind raced. "How do you know all of this? Why should I believe you?" He took a deep breath, visibly struggling to articulate his thoughts. "I was in a similar situation once, and I barely escaped. I thought I was done with it, but when I saw you at the subway, I couldn't ignore the signs. I recognized him." "What do you mean by signs?" she pressed, sensing that the answers she sought were buried beneath layers of his cryptic explanations. "He's involved in some, well, let's just say, he has a group. They do things, terrible things." Jason's voice dropped to a whisper, and he leaned forward, as if the walls themselves had ears. "He's been targeting people, and you caught his attention." Mia felt her heart drop at his words. "Targeting people? Why?" "Because of something you possess," he replied, his gaze intense. "Something that makes you special. I don't know what it is, but I can't let him get to you. You need to stay hidden. That's why I came." "Hidden? From what?" she asked, her confusion mounting. Jason hesitated, glancing around her apartment as if to ensure they were alone. "There are people involved in this. People who won't hesitate to hurt you to get what they want. They're connected to him, and he's looking for you. I can help you, but you have to trust me." Mia felt the weight of his words. A part of her wanted to laugh it off as an absurd tale, but the seriousness in his eyes and the lingering tension from earlier held her captive. She needed answers. What do you want me to do? First, you have to stop going out alone. Stay here for a few days while I figure things out. I can help you find a way to protect yourself, he urged. What makes you think I want your help? She challenged, her instincts still on high alert. I don't even know you. I know, he admitted, his tone softening. But you don't understand the danger you're in. I've been watching you, but I swear it's for your own good. I didn't mean to invade your space or life, but this is bigger than both of us. Mia weighed her options, anxiety twisting in her stomach. She had always been cautious, especially living in a city that often felt overwhelming. But Jason's words resonated with a truth she couldn't ignore. Okay, she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. I'll stay here, but I need more than just vague warnings. I need to know what's going on. He nodded, visibly relieved. Good. First, let's figure out a plan. We need to cover our tracks. If he knows where you live, we can't let him find you here. As they began to strategize, Jason detailed how to secure the apartment, the necessity of covering windows, and being mindful of any unusual activity outside. Mia found herself caught between fear and a strange sense of camaraderie. The urgency of their situation drew them closer, each minute bringing them to a precarious edge. Hours passed as they discussed potential escape routes and contingencies. The weight of Jason's knowledge and the danger lurking outside kept her heart racing, but she also found herself intrigued by him. Who was this man, and why did he care so much? Just as they finished outlining their plan, a loud thud resonated from the hallway, jolting them both upright. Mia's heart sank. What was that? Jason held a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay quiet. He moved toward the door, ears straining for any further sounds. They waited in tense silence, but the echo of footsteps faded quickly, replaced by a stillness that felt almost suffocating. I don't think it was anything, he finally whispered, but the uncertainty in his voice only heightened her anxiety. As he turned to face her, the gravity of the moment hit them both. They were in this together now, bound by fear and a shared goal of survival. But as Mia glanced at the door, her instincts screamed that something was very wrong. Stay close, Jason said, stepping toward the window and peering out through the blinds. I'll keep watch. Mia felt her heart race. Whatever was out there, she couldn't shake the feeling that it was coming for her, and she was running out of time. The tension in the room thickened as Mia and Jason exchanged worried glances. The unsettling sounds from the hallway seemed to grow more pronounced in the stillness, each creak of the building amplifying her fear. She pressed her back against the wall, glancing around the dimly lit room, searching for anything that could offer a sense of security. Jason kept his eyes glued to the window, his breath steady but his body tense. I'll keep watch, but we need to be prepared for anything, he said quietly, the seriousness of his tone grounding her even as anxiety churned within. Mia nodded, swallowing hard. What do we do if he comes back? If it was him? First, we need to gather anything we can use for protection, Jason replied, scanning the room. Do you have anything sharp? A knife, maybe? Mia shook her head. I don't keep anything like that around. I usually feel safe here. Safe? This place is anything but, he muttered, his voice laced with urgency. I don't want to scare you, but we need to be ready. As he moved about the room, he opened drawers and examined her kitchen utensils, his expression a mix of frustration and determination. Mia's mind raced with questions. Why was this happening to her? Why had Jason stepped into her life so suddenly? She felt a bizarre mixture of gratitude and suspicion. Suddenly, a faint scratching noise emanated from the door, followed by a low, guttural whisper that sent chills down her spine. Mia, let me in. Her breath caught in her throat. It was him, the stranger from the subway, his voice dripping with a sinister familiarity that chilled her to the bone. What do we do? She whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. Jason's eyes widened. Do not answer him, he instructed firmly, positioning himself in front of the door as if to shield her from whatever lurked on the other side. He's trying to manipulate you. We can't let him in. Mia, I know you're there. I just want to talk. I promise it'll be fine. The voice was coaxing, sickly sweet, dripping with false reassurance. Mia's mind raced, grappling with the fear that gripped her. The memory of their encounter lingered vividly in her mind. She could still see the way he had looked at her, a predatory glint in his eyes. "He's not safe," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's right. He's dangerous," Jason said, turning slightly to face her. "Keep your phone ready. We may need to call the police." Before Mia could respond, there was a sudden, violent bang against the door, shaking the frame and sending a jolt of adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Let me in. I know you're scared. I can help you," the stranger shouted, anger punctuating his voice. "Stay back," Jason yelled, moving toward the door, his expression fierce. "You're not welcome here." Mia felt her heart race as she fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling. She dialed 911, the sound of the stranger's frantic pleas ringing in her ears. "Please hurry," she whispered into the phone, hoping against hope that help would arrive soon. "Why won't you open the door?" he screamed, desperation turning to rage. "You're making a mistake, Mia. I'm the only one who can keep you safe." The room felt suffocating as Mia pressed her back against the wall, eyes darting between the door and Jason. She couldn't understand how her life had taken such a dark turn in just a matter of days. What had she stumbled into? Jason's voice cut through her thoughts. "Mia, focus. Is anyone outside? Can you see anything?" She moved closer to the window, her heart pounding, and peeked through the blinds. The hallway was empty, but the eerie silence felt oppressive. "I don't see him," she said, feeling a glimmer of hope. Maybe he left. But just as the words left her lips, she heard a faint rustle coming from the other side of the door, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps retreating into the shadows. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. Something inside her warned that the stranger wasn't gone for good. "Stay here," Jason instructed, his tone serious as he crept toward the door, ready to open it just a crack. "Mia, stay behind me," he urged, glancing back to ensure she was out of sight. She nodded, heart racing as he carefully turned the knob and peered outside. "It's clear for now, but we need to get out of here," he said urgently. "We can't wait for him to come back." "Where do we go?" Mia asked, panic edging into her voice. "What if he's waiting for us?" "There's a maintenance exit in the basement that leads to an alley. It's our best shot," Jason replied, determination set in his features. "We have to move quickly." Just as they made a plan to leave, another loud bang erupted from the door, rattling the frame. "Mia, I'm here for you. Don't leave me," the stranger shouted, his voice dripping with desperation that twisted her gut. "We can't waste any more time," Jason said, pushing the door open just enough for them to slip through. "On 3 we go." Mia nodded, her heart pounding in her chest as they prepared to bolt. She glanced at the door, the wood splintered and worn, as if it could give way at any moment. 1, 2, 3. They dashed into the hallway, adrenaline surging as they raced toward the stairwell at the end of the corridor. Mia could hear her heartbeat echoing in her ears, drowning out the sounds around them. As they reached the stairwell, the darkness enveloped them. The flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the walls, intensifying the feeling of dread. They took the stairs 2 at a time, Mia's breaths coming in short gasps as she tried to maintain her composure. "Just a little further," Jason urged, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Finally, they reached the basement door. Jason pushed it open, revealing a narrow, dimly lit corridor that seemed to stretch infinitely. "Let's move," he said, urgency in his voice. They slipped inside, shutting the door behind them as the muffled sounds of the outside world faded away. Mia felt a sense of relief wash over her, but it was quickly overshadowed by an intense unease. They had escaped, but for how long? The stranger was still out there, and Mia had the unsettling feeling that he wouldn't stop until he found her. As they made their way through the basement, shadows danced on the walls, and the air grew colder. They passed rusted pipes and old machinery, the remnants of a bygone era, and Mia felt a shiver run down her spine. "Keep close," Jason whispered, glancing back at her. "We need to find the exit before he catches up." But as they moved deeper into the darkness, an unexpected sound pierced the silence, a soft, echoing laughter that chilled Mia to the bone. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around them, like a sinister blanket. "What was that?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "I don't know," Jason replied, his face taut with concentration. "Stay alert." The laughter faded, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. They continued down the corridor, the shadows stretching ominously as they moved. Mia's mind raced, fear mixing with curiosity. What secrets lay hidden within these walls? And how deep did the danger run? The corridor stretched endlessly before Mia and Jason, an oppressive darkness enveloping them as they ventured deeper into the basement. The distant echo of laughter still lingered in the air, prickling Mia's skin and amplifying the gnawing anxiety in her gut. Every shadow seemed to loom larger, and the chill in the air thickened with a palpable tension. "Keep moving," Jason urged, glancing over his shoulder as they pressed forward. "We need to reach the exit." Mia nodded, forcing her legs to keep moving, but the weight of uncertainty hung heavily between them. "Do you think he'll find us down here?" she asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. "He won't," Jason replied, though the determination in his voice wavered slightly. "He's not as familiar with this place as we are. We have the advantage for now." Mia wanted to believe him, but with every step, the sense of dread intensified. The flickering fluorescent lights overhead cast eerie shadows on the concrete walls, and the air felt thick with an unsettling energy that made her skin crawl. They finally reached a heavy door at the end of the corridor, its surface worn and rusty. "This must lead to the alley," Jason said, pushing against it. With a loud creak, the door swung open, revealing a dimly lit exit that led to a narrow alleyway. Finally, Mia breathed, relief flooding her as they stepped outside into the cool night air. But their relief was short-lived. As they emerged, they spotted the stranger waiting at the far end of the alley, his figure silhouetted against the dim light. He leaned against the wall, a sickly grin plastered on his face that sent chills down Mia's spine. "I knew you'd come this way," he said, his voice smooth and chilling. "You can't run from me, Mia. I just want to talk." Mia's heart raced, her instincts screaming to flee, but she felt rooted to the spot, a mixture of fear and confusion clouding her judgment. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice trembling despite her efforts to sound strong. "I want to help you," he replied, pushing off the wall and taking a step closer. "I know things about you, things no one else does. I can protect you from the real danger." Jason stepped in front of Mia, his stance protective. "You're the danger. We don't want anything from you." The stranger's smile widened, revealing a hint of madness in his eyes. "You don't understand, do you? The things I've seen, the things I know, they're coming for you. I'm the only one who can save you." Mia's breath quickened as she felt the weight of his words. There was a twisted logic in what he said, a dark allure that beckoned her to listen. But deep down, she knew better. "Stay back," Jason shouted, his voice cutting through her thoughts. "We're leaving, Mia. Now!" As they turned to flee, the stranger lunged forward, a hand reaching out as if to grab her. "Don't run. I'm not your enemy," he yelled, desperation lacing his voice. The confrontation escalated. Jason shoved Mia behind him, confronting the stranger with a fierce resolve. "You need to leave her alone." Mia's mind raced. She glanced around, searching for something, anything that could help them. The alley was littered with debris, and her gaze landed on a broken piece of glass near her feet. With a surge of adrenaline, she bent down and picked it up, gripping it tightly as she positioned herself beside Jason. "Get away from us," she shouted, her voice stronger now. The stranger paused, his expression shifting from determination to surprise. "You don't want to do this, Mia," he said, a hint of concern creeping into his tone. "You don't know what I'm capable of. You're not going to hurt us," Jason shouted, his eyes fixed on the stranger with fierce intensity. "Stay away." Mia felt a surge of confidence, emboldened by Jason's protective presence. "I don't need your help. I don't want anything to do with you." The stranger's expression twisted into anger. "You think you could just walk away? I know your secrets, Mia. You can't escape them." As he advanced, Jason raised his hands, ready to defend them. "Get back. You don't want to do this." Suddenly, the sounds of sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. Mia's heart raced at the sound of approaching help. The stranger's eyes widened, and in a moment of panic, he hesitated. You think they can save you? They don't understand. You don't know what you're up against. But before he could take another step, Jason lunged forward, shoving the stranger back. The man stumbled, and in that instant, Mia felt a rush of adrenaline as she brandished the shard of glass. "Get away from us!" she screamed, brandishing the makeshift weapon defiantly. The stranger's expression changed, a mixture of rage and surprise. "You think you can stop me?" he shouted, stepping back and raising his hands in mock surrender. But as the sirens drew closer, his bravado faltered. "You think this is over? You have no idea what's coming." He spat before turning on his heel and sprinting down the alley, disappearing into the shadows. Mia and Jason stood there, hearts pounding as they watched him vanish. The sound of sirens grew louder, and within moments, police officers flooded into the alley, flashlights illuminating the darkness. "Are you two all right?" one officer called out, rushing toward them. He was just here." Mia gasped, her voice shaking. "He was following us." Jason took a deep breath, relief washing over him as he turned to her. "We're safe now," he said, his eyes softening. Mia nodded, feeling the weight of the night's events crashing down on her. They were alive. They had escaped, but the specter of the stranger lingered in her mind. As the officers questioned them, she realized something profound. She had faced her fears and fought back. In that moment, with Jason by her side, she understood that she could take control of her life, no matter how terrifying it seemed. "Let's get you both checked out," one officer said gently, leading them toward the waiting squad car. Mia glanced back toward the shadows of the alley, uncertainty still swirling in her mind. But as she looked at Jason, his expression filled with concern and relief. She knew that together they could face whatever came next. As they climbed into the car, a sense of hope flickered within her. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. She had the strength to confront her past, and with Jason's support, the courage to move forward into whatever darkness lay ahead. Don't forget to subscribe in the channel and like the video for more contents.